Never fear. Disorder in the court is here. I am here. Just looking at the stream, waiting for it to start. Hello, good morning. Good morning, good morning, good morning. It's like they're coming into the courtroom. Can we see? Look at all that evidence. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Can you hear me? I did some homework last night because I was feeling a little bit lost. Good. Glad you can hear me. Thank you, Marie. Thank you, Emily. Welcome to everybody here. I did some self-imposed homework last night because I felt bad, continuing to say I don't know, and also not having a better grasp of. I know it is 6 a.m. You are correct. It is 6 a.m. And they go back to that chair. They decided to stop using the guard view during small breaks in the courtroom. They don't want to put the guard. Good morning. They don't want to put the guard in there, so they just focus on a bunch of, I guess, the defense table with all their files. So, I wanted to get a better idea of, how many who has testified and who hasn't testified and things like that. So I did go through the witness list, the state's witness list, and I checked off all of the people who have testified. Um, and so I think I'll have a better grasp for that today. Also, I want to clarify something. Um, for those of you who were here, and I'll clarify this later. For those of you who were here, good morning, Johnny. Well, afternoon to you. Um, at the end of the stream yesterday, of the second stream, the afternoon session, we're talking about when the latent print analyst was up there, the detective who was testifying to all of that. I thought I heard him say that they were able to match Kayla's palm print, around somewhere. No, I'm not ill. I just woke up about.
The new witness. Please be seated.
Wasn't Kayla's print.
Yes.
He was saying that they
Good morning,
received
Good morning.
her known print to be able to.
I was told you were going to file something, but I don't see any. But I just checked with the clerk's office.
Yes, Your Honor. If you could approach.
Yes.
So it was what I heard the print guy say was different from what I relayed to you, and it's partially because I was, it was really hard to follow a lot of the testimony yesterday because a lot of times you couldn't hear the questions, and then it was just hard to follow from a paying attention perspective because it was very technical and drony. But also when the latent print analyst was up there at the end of the day, there were a few different things going on, and I just thought I heard him say that he did confirm Kayla's print somewhere, but he didn't. He has a known print of hers to compare to. So if anyone left with the impression that they found Kayla's print, in the same places where they found, yeah, I bet, cutie pie. where they found Adam's prints. I apologize if I confused you at all by saying, "Oh, and they found Kayla's too." It wasn't it wasn't her actual print that they lifted. It was just he was saying that they have her known print for analysis. So if you hopefully that was a clear understanding of the mistake that I made, and from there we shall move on. I wish. So, and I've been trying to figure out the best way to present the. I downloaded the witness list from the state and marked off all the people who have testified so far. But there are too many pages to just upload here on StreamYard to present to you. So I'm trying to figure out a better way to show it. I'll probably show it on a tab, but I don't want to be missing the beginning of court while I'm showing you that. So it's just the, things you got to juggle when you're trying to present using limited tools and software and things like that. It's dinner. It's almost dinner time for you, Johnny. So with just how many people are here watching at this moment, are you thinking yet? Do you have a feeling yet on where you would go if you were a jury? If you were on the jury, would you go guilty, not guilty? Would you be so hung that you think? Would you be so undecisive? Not being able to decide that you would. Oh, here they come. That you think it would end up in a hung jury. I showed a poll from Court TV yesterday, and it was pretty overwhelmingly guilty. Okay, that's fair, Mayla's mom. I don't think that there's at this moment in time. Yeah, Johnny. At this moment in time,
Oh, right. DNS.
I personally like if the state stopped their case right now. It's like they said, we rest and didn't present anymore. I don't think I'd be able to convict. You know what I mean? That's how I feel at this moment. But we're not at the end of the trial. And things change, and there's still appear to be a lot of witnesses to go. Now, yesterday, when they were talking about wrapping up, yeah, I understand Mayla's mom. Yesterday, when they were wrapping up, they were talking about how they had to roll over. Well, they had to roll over two additional witnesses to today, or for they had to reschedule from yesterday because they were supposed to testify today. And they also talked about someone who's incarcerated possibly testifying, and I don't know if yesterday's schedule changed today's schedule. But I still I would say that yesterday, between the corroborating testimony, the things that corroborate Kayla's testimony are helpful, and the palm print analysis was very helpful.
But I'm not so worried about it anymore.
Yeah. The palm print analysis was helpful, moved me in the guilty direction.
Why don't we put your? Oh, it's a different witness. Never mind.
Your Honor, if you wish to get the jury, that's fine. I'll be ready by the time they're here.
Okay. Please bring in the jurors. All rise for the jury, please.
Yeah, from a court of public opinion perspective, I'm guilty. I'm on the guilty side. Let's put it that way. But if I was sitting on the jury, I wouldn't feel like I could vote guilty in good conscience without more information. Well, it's not that, but Johnny, it's not that they are accusing Adam. So it's not that they're trying that it's our job, they're accusing Adam. So it's not about who else could it be, really. It's about, is it Adam? And that's their burden of proof to that's the state's burden. They're saying he did it. Now they have to show it to us.
Morning, ladies and gentlemen. You may be seated. State may call its next witness.
Your Honor, the state calls Alan Axwood Salas.
It sounds like they put the microphone on a table where somebody's going to be doing a bunch of pen work. Oh God, I hate that shit. Sorry, you guys. It bothers me so much when there's something right next to the mic during an entire trial that makes noise the entire time, like the keyboard. Yeah.
Mr. Allen, or Mr. Axwood Salas, you can remain standing and just raise your right hand. Do you swear that the testimony that you're about to provide this jury will be the truth and the whole truth under the pains and penalties of perjury?
I do.
You have a seat. Make yourself comfortable. Is there some water in front of you? And when you're ready, if you can just start by stating and spelling your full name for the record.
Excuse me.
Right, Christina?
Alan Axwood Salas. ALANACKROYD hyphen ISALES.
Mr. Axwood Salas, where are you currently employed?
I'm currently employed by DNA Labs International.
And how long have you been employed there?
I've worked at DNA Labs International for roughly the last 2.5 years.
What is your current assignment with that organization?
I'm currently a senior DNA analyst.
And what is a senior DNA analyst? What do you do?
DNA analyst examines evidence connected to crime scenes for the presence of biological material and seeks to obtain DNA profiles from whatever biological material they find.
And what's your current role and responsibility in that as a senior DNA analyst?
Well, as I said, I conduct analyses on evidence, write up reports as to my conclusions, testify as necessary. In addition to that, I also participate in continuing education, proficiency testing, training newer analysts in the protocols and procedures of the laboratory, and any other duties I can perform to help the lab function smoothly.
Before you were employed by DNA Labs International, where were you employed?
Prior to DNA Labs International, I worked for the Defense Forensic Science Center, which is the forensic laboratory for the armed forces.
And let me back up for just a moment. DNA Labs International, where's that organization based out of?
That's based out of Deerfield Beach, Florida.
You mentioned your prior role with, I think you mentioned the defense. Can you just repeat?
Defense Forensic Science Center.
Defense Forensic Science Center. How long were you employed by then?
I worked there for roughly 10 years.
And when did you start with them? What year?
I started with them in 2011.
Can you tell these jurors about your background, your education?
Well, I got a bachelor's in science in biology from Haverford College, and then a master's in forensic science from Virginia Commonwealth University.
And what year did you graduate from? Did you say Haverford College?
Haverford College, yes. I graduated in 2008.
And what specialized training and experience do you have for your current position?
Well, every laboratory will have its own training plan for DNA analysts. So my first job with the Defense Forensic Science Center, I passed their specific qualifications. And after that, when I was employed at DNA Labs International, I then passed their specific training plan. And in addition to that, I participate in proficiency testing, continuing education, keeping abreast of developments in my field.
Have you testified previously? I know you said that that's a function of your current role, but have you testified in a superior court?
Yes, I have.
Can you tell the jurors what your experience includes with that? How many times have you testified?
To date, not including depositions, I've testified in 2 hearings and 2 trials, not in this jurisdiction, however.
DNA Labs International, is that an accredited organization?
Yes, it is.
And what is its accreditation?
Well, it's recognized as a laboratory that can be trusted to follow proper protocols and procedures, keep to guidelines set by the FBI. And this was accreditation was given by the American National Standards Institute National Accreditation Board.
You mentioned proficiency testing. Can you tell the jurors what that is?
Essentially, a proficiency test is a mock case submitted by an organization outside my laboratory, in which they know what results I should get from DNA analysis on the evidence they send us. And I have to properly follow my lab's protocols and procedures to get those correct results. That demonstrates I can properly do the job.
So that's proficiency testing in general. Have you completed proficiency testing?
Yes, I have.
What were the results?
I passed every proficiency test.
Approximately how many samples have you performed DNA analysis on in your career?
This is a very rough estimate, but I would say that I've worked on approximately 30,000 samples in my career at this point.
30,000?
Yes.
Have you ever been recognized as an expert in the field of forensic analysis, DNA analysis?
Yes, because I've qualified as an expert witness in other jurisdictions.
Your Honor, the state moves to qualify Mr. Ackroyd-Azales as an expert in the field of DNA analysis.
I have no objection to him giving his opinion. The court finds him so qualified.
And mentioned depositions. Did you testify in a deposition in this specific matter?
Yes, I did.
And during that deposition, did you reference reports that you had written in this specific matter?
Yes, I did.
Can you tell the jurors how many reports you've authored in this case?
I wrote 6 reports for this case.
The material that you referenced during that deposition, that was the defense's opportunity to ask you questions. Do you have those here with you today?
Yes, I have them.
And would referring to those items, those reports, the material that you authored in this case, would that help your testimony?
Yes, it would.
Being able to refer to that information.
It would be helpful.
Your Honor, I'd ask that this witness be allowed to reference his case material as necessary.
Upon request as necessary.
Thank you.
Upon request as necessary. Yeah, he does look sleep deprived too. He looks peaked.
So, Mr. Ackroyd-Azales, this jury's already heard from an analyst, a DNA analyst before, but just generally, can you describe what DNA is?
DNA stands for deoxyribonucleic acid. It's the basic building block of life. It's present in all living things.
And can you tell the jurors where it's found in the human body?
DNA is found in the nucleus of the cells within a body.
And does DNA differ cell to cell?
Within a single organism, DNA does not differ from cell to cell.
How about person to person?
Person to person, yes, the DNA does differ. That's the basis of DNA analysis.
And can you just explain for the jurors, can you just walk them through the steps of DNA analysis?
So there's a couple key steps that had to be performed once a sample is collected from evidence. First is extraction, in which that sample is exposed to a combination of heat and chemicals. Now that serves to break open whatever cells are present in a sample and purify the DNA within it. Following that is quantitation. All that means is just measuring how much DNA is present in that extracted sample. And if there's enough DNA, the step after that is amplification. Now, the human genome, that's a lot of information. I don't need to look at every bit of that. I'm just interested in roughly 20 or so genetic markers, what I call loci. And that's enough for me to differentiate the DNA from one person to another. So the way amplification works is that it makes millions upon millions of copies of just those genetic markers in a sample. So once that's been done, the last step is injecting that amplified sample into a genetic analyzer. And essentially this instrument just translates that amplified sample into a DNA profile that I can interpret and analyze.
And you mentioned your lab's accreditation. Does your lab follow standardized protocols and procedures?
Yes, it does.
And you mentioned a review process. Can you just describe what that review process is for the jurors?
Well, a review that my reports always have to go through is a technical review. So another qualified analyst has to review my work, make sure that they agree with my conclusions, and that I wrote up my results appropriately.
Mr. Acro-Rosales, I want to switch gears and I want to talk about your work on this case. And again, if you need to refer to your notes at any point, just let us know. But did you conduct DNA analysis in this case?
Yes, I did.
And what known DNA samples were you provided during the course of your work on this case?
To be clear, DNA sample references that the laboratory worked at or DNA profiles that were provided, but from another agency.
Let's first talk about DNA profiles that were provided by another agency.
If I can refer to the reports. DNA profiles for Harmony Montgomery and Adam Montgomery were provided by the New Hampshire Department of Safety Forensic Laboratory.
And that DNA profile for Harmony Montgomery, do you know where that came from? What that was, where that profile was developed from?
That was taken from a toothbrush, presumed to have been Harmony Montgomery's property, and as such was taken as an alternate reference for Harmony Montgomery.
Two known profiles is what you mentioned receiving. During your work on this case, your involvement on this case, did you develop another profile?
Yes, we
Go ahead.
we received a reference sample for Crystal Sori, and we developed a DNA profile from that sample within my laboratory.
And was that from a buccal swab?
Yes, it was.
So now that we know about these known samples that you received, I want to talk about your work on this case, specific items that you processed and analyzed. Before we get there, though, can you just describe the 4 steps that you go through when you receive a swab, when you start with a swab or cutting of an unknown DNA sample?
Well, as I explained earlier for the DNA process, we go through extraction, separating the DNA within the cells in the sample from the rest of it, quantitation, measuring how much DNA there is, amplification, making copies of just the genetic markers that I look at in a DNA profile, and then injecting that amplified sample into a genetic analyzer. And that's what gives me a DNA profile that I can look at and interpret.
During the course of your involvement on this case, did you receive an item MER 3D RL13?
Yes.
Okay. And so let's begin with that item. That's already been admitted in this case as States Exhibit 74, and it's marked MER 3D RL13. What is that item? Can you tell the jurors?
If I can go to the report.
Please.
That item is pieces of sheetrock with heavy stains. A piece of sheetrock with heavy stains, excuse me.
Piece of sheetrock with heavy stains. Did you perform DNA analysis on that item?
I performed DNA analysis on samples taken from this item.
Okay, and how many samples were taken from that item?
2 samples were taken from this piece of sheetrock, one from the left bottom corner of the staining, and one from the center edge of the staining. And these 2 samples were combined together to go through the DNA process as one sample.
And can you just explain why you do that and how it works?
Well, in this, why 2 samples were combined?
Yes.
In this case, it was presumptive that that staining all came from the same source. It also tested as indicative of blood. So we went on treating that as from being from the same person.
And you said it tested as indicative of blood. What does that mean for the jurors?
So we did what is called a presumptive test for the presence of blood. So that's generally considered a presumptive test is very sensitive for whatever material it's testing for, but it's not considered confirmatory, as in it's not considered specific to that material. So in this case, we only did a presumptive testing. So all I can say is that blood was indicated on this item.
So you combined the two samples that you received. What were the results of your testing?
At the end of the DNA process for that sample, the resulting DNA profile indicated at least one female contributor. However, due to some ambiguity in the profile, I interpreted it as two contributors.
And what was the ambiguity? Can you explain that?
Well, there are known side effects of the DNA process that can at times indicate that there's another contributor present. Basically, those signs weren't conclusive enough for me to say that there was definitely at least two people there, but it was suggesting that there were two people. So as a result, my language was that I interpreted that profile as two people.
What other conclusions were you able to draw from those samples in your analysis?
In comparing that DNA profile to the reference profiles from Harmony Montgomery, Crystal Sorey, and Adam Montgomery, none of them were able to be ruled out as possible contributors to that mixture.
Did you perform a likelihood ratio on those results?
Yes. A likelihood ratio is essentially a comparison of two competing ideas. In this case, I'm saying that for this DNA mixture, one idea is that the DNA profile is explained by the presence of one of the references and an unknown person, versus the other idea being that the DNA profile is made up of two unknown people. So by comparing those two contrasting ideas to explain the evidence, I can generate a likelihood ratio which says which of those propositions we say is more likely than the other.
And what was the likelihood ratio with respect to the profile that you received from Harmony Montgomery?
The DNA, I'm reading directly from the report, if that's all right.
Any objection? No objection. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
The DNA profile from the sample is approximately 4.1 billion times more probable if the sample originated from Harmony Montgomery and an unknown person than if it originated from two unknown persons. And this analysis provides very strong support for the proposition that Harmony Montgomery is a contributor to the DNA profile obtained from this sample.
And you just said very strong support. Why use that phrase, very strong support?
Well, we use a verbal scale to describe the strength of likelihood ratios. And the strongest language that I'm allowed to use is very strong support. And that begins when a likelihood ratio is 1 million or greater. And in this case, as I said, the likelihood ratio is 4.1 billion.
And can you explain the significance of that number, 4.1 billion?
Well, just to give us a scale, a sense of the numbers, a million is a 1 followed by 6 zeros, if you're ever lucky enough to see it on a check. A billion, on the other hand, is a 1 followed by 9 zeros.
So we're still talking about States Exhibit 74. That's MER 3D RL13, the piece of sheetrock that you mentioned Did you conduct further analysis of that item?
Yes, as I said, I also conducted comparisons to Adam Montgomery and Crystal Sorey. In comparing Crystal Sorey to this DNA profile from the piece of sheetrock, the DNA profile obtained from the sample is approximately 12 times more probable if the sample originated from two unknown persons than if it originated from Crystal Sorey and an unknown person. In this case, this analysis provides limited support for the proposition that Crystal Sorey is not a contributor to the mixture obtained from this sample.
Any other analysis that you performed with respect to those samples?
In comparing Adam Montgomery, the DNA profile obtained from the sample is approximately 18 times more probable if the sample originated from two unknown persons than if it originated from Adam Montgomery and an unknown person. So, and this analysis provides limited support for the proposition that Adam Montgomery is not a contributor to this DNA profile.
Still with respect to States Exhibit 74, MER 3D13, RL 13, which the jury saw yesterday, just for clarification. Did you test another sample of that item at some point during your involvement in this case?
Yes, in a report after this one that I just described the results from, another sample was taken for testing.
And why was another sample taken for testing?
Well, we received permission to use a amplification kit different from the one that is originally approved for the New Hampshire State Police.
Can you walk us through the process of that second sample that you took, or third sample rather, that you took?
Well, I should say that we requested this permission because the DNA was very degraded, we could see on the sheetrock. And the kit that we wanted to use was an upgraded version of the one we had used before. So it tested for more genetic markers, and we would be able to perform more conclusive analysis, I should say.
Now, you just mentioned the DNA that you observed on that item. It's before being degraded. Can you explain to the jurors what that means?
Well, DNA is not a very strong molecule, I should say. There's a lot of different environmental factors that can break it down. That includes ultraviolet light, exposure to heat, chemicals, cleaning agents, strong acids and bases, prolonged immersion in water, bacteria. So all that can serve to break down DNA. So there's not many places just out in the world where DNA won't be attacked in some fashion.
How about time? Does time have anything to do with
Well,
degradation of DNA samples?
Generally speaking, yes. The longer DNA is exposed to any of those elements, DNA is going to break down even further with more time, with more exposure.
The third piece that you tested, can you walk us through your analysis, the process that you used?
Yes, just flipping to that report. So this is still that item, the piece of sheetrock with the heavy staining. An additional sample was collected from approximately 3 inches of the bottom of the stained area. And again, blood was indicated on that sample. And the DNA profile obtained from this sample, it definitively indicated a mixture of at least 2 individuals.
Were you able to draw any conclusions based on your analysis?
In comparing Harmony Montgomery, Crystal Sorey, and Adam Montgomery to this new mixture, again, I wasn't able to conclusively exclude, they could not be conclusively ruled out as possible contributors to the mixture.
Did you perform a likelihood ratio as you did with the prior samples?
Yes, I did.
What were the results of that likelihood ratio?
In comparing Harmony Montgomery to this mixture, the DNA profile obtained from the sample is approximately 1.1 trillion times more probable if the sample originated from Harmony Montgomery and 1 unknown person than if it originated from 2 unknown persons. And this analysis provides very strong support for the proposition that Harmony Montgomery is a contributor to the DNA profile obtained from the sample.
And that terminology that you just used, the very strong support, that again is the highest level of support that you can provide. Is that correct?
That is the strongest language that I'm allowed to use.
And can you explain the significance of that number, 1.1 trillion?
Well, a trillion is a million multiplied by another million. Or to put it another way, as I was saying, a million is a 1 followed by 6 zeros. A trillion is a 1 followed by 12 zeros.
Good morning, Alex.
You mentioned 2 contributors, 2 potential contributors. Was there a second profile that you were able to obtain from that item?
Sorry, do you mean was I able to perform a likelihood ratio for that second contributor in the mixture?
Correct, yes.
I wasn't able to conclusively, I was able to perform a likelihood ratio for Adam Montgomery and Crystal Sorey to that mixture. For Crystal Sorey, the DNA profile obtained from the sample is approximately 1.5 times more probable if the sample originated from Crystal Sorey and 1 unknown person than if it originated from 2 unknown persons. But we consider that uninformative if a likelihood ratio is between 1.1 and 2, because that's just not strong support for either proposition. In comparing Adam Montgomery to that mixture, The DNA profile obtained from the sample is approximately 69 times more probable if the sample originated from 2 unknown persons than if it originated from Adam Montgomery and 1 unknown person. And this analysis provides limited support for the proposition that Adam Montgomery is not a contributor to the DNA profile obtained from the sample.
Just to clarify, from that third sample that you took, how many profiles were you able to obtain? How many profiles did you obtain? DNA profiles.
It was only one DNA profile, but I could see that there were at least 2 individuals within it.
And what does that mean for the jurors?
Well, essentially, I was only able to, we treat it as identifying Harmony Montgomery in that mixture, given the likelihood ratio, but I was not able to conclusively identify the additional second contributor in that mixture.
The second contributor, what can you tell the jurors about that profile?
Well, it was a very partial person. There was not a lot of genetic information for that person in the DNA profile. So I would not honestly expect to be able to identify that person, even if we had obtained the reference that matched that person in the evidence.
What does that mean scientifically, a partial person?
Well, essentially that there just wasn't a lot of genetic data. There wasn't a lot of DNA from that second contributor present in the DNA profile.
So I want to turn your attention now to another item. Did you have occasion to test samples from MER 3D RL14 and 12? That's DLI number 22-07495.01.
I'm sorry, can you say it again?
The DLI number or
The DLI number.
Yep, it's 22-07495.01. And just to clarify, DLI applies its own numbers to items that it receives. Is that right?
Yes, I did have occasion to perform DNA analysis on that item.
Okay. And sorry, you were looking at your notes when I asked, but DLI, when you process items, you apply your own item numbers to the evidence. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yes.
And so this item has previously been admitted as State's Exhibit 81. What is that item? Can you tell the jurors?
That item, 22-07495.01, that is 2 rails screwed together.
And I think you answered this already, but did you perform analysis on that item?
Yes, I did.
How did you perform analysis of that item?
Well, there was staining visible on this item, so blood was indicated on the rails that were screwed together. And following that, the sample was collected from that staining for DNA analysis. And already went through the DNA process, and the resulting DNA profile of that indicated at least 1 contributor.
1 contributor, no.
Yeah, a single contributor.
What results and conclusions were you able to draw from that?
Well, Harmony Montgomery could not be ruled out as a possible contributor to that DNA profile.
And just as with the prior samples, were you able to perform a likelihood ratio?
Yes, I was, in comparing Harmony Montgomery to that DNA profile. The result of which was the DNA profile obtained from the sample is approximately 1.4 trillion times more probable if the sample originated from Harmony Montgomery than if it originated from an unknown person. And this analysis provides, again, very strong support for the proposition that Harmony Montgomery is a contributor to the DNA profile obtained from the sample.
Again, can you explain the significance of 1.4 trillion?
Well, again, the language for very strong support for a proposition that starts when a likelihood ratio is 1 million or greater. And a trillion can be explained as a million multiplied by another million, or a million is again a 1 followed by 6 zeros, and a trillion is a 1 followed by 12 zeros.
I want to turn to the other items that you analyzed during the course of your involvement with this investigation. And so I want to go through those items individually and talk about the conclusions that you were able to draw, starting with an item LH, 1LH, a pillow with rope drawstring.
Yes, I have that in front of me.
What conclusions, if any, were you able to draw from your analysis of that item?
Well, staining was visible on the pillow with the drawstring, but no blood was indicated on this item. And following that, 2 samples were collected from the item for DNA analysis, one from the rope and one from the exterior of the pillow. However, no DNA was detected on either sample, so we didn't do any further analysis past that point.
How about item BE017? BE017.
BE017 was a clear, thin zip tie. Again, there was staining, visible staining, but no blood was indicated on the zip tie, and an insufficient amount of DNA was detected from a sample collected from it. So again, no further analysis was performed.
I want to turn your attention to item number JP88. Did you test that item?
Yes.
And what conclusions, if any, were you able to draw from your results?
This item was a pink child sock. Apparent hairs were visible on the sock. We did not conduct any analysis on that. We did take a DNA sample from the interior of the sock, and the DNA profile obtained indicated a mixture of at least 3 individuals with at least 1 male contributor. And furthermore, crystal sorghum could not be ruled out as a possible contributor to that mixed DNA profile.
And did you further analyze that in another report?
Yes, I did.
What were the results of that additional analysis?
If I can flip to it. And further reports, I was also able to compare the DNA profile for Harmony Montgomery and Adam Montgomery to the DNA profile obtained from the sock.
What conclusions were you able to draw from that comparison?
Well, first, in comparing crystal sorghum, probabilistic genotyping results supported their exclusion as a contributor to the DNA profile obtained from the interior of the sock when a proposition of 3 overall contributors was considered. In comparing Harmony Montgomery, again, the probabilistic genotyping results for Harmony Montgomery supported their exclusion, again, as a contributor to the DNA profile obtained from the interior of the sock. In comparing Adam Montgomery, the probabilistic genotyping results for Adam Montgomery, again, supported their exclusion as a contributor to the DNA profile previously obtained from the interior of the sock when a proposition of 3 overall contributors was considered.
Any other conclusions you were able to draw from that item? No, that was all the analysis that was done on that item. I want to turn your attention to JP 216-C. You have an opportunity to review and analyze that item.
Yes, I did. This item, sorry, one moment. This item was a cutting from a sweater.
I'm sorry.
This item was a cutting from a sweater, JP 216-C.
Okay. What, if any, conclusions were you able to draw from your analysis of that item?
Blood was indicated on that cutting. However, an insufficient amount of DNA was detected from a sample taken from the cutting. And because of that, no further analysis was performed.
I want to turn your attention to MER 3D1A. Did you have an opportunity to analyze that item?
Yes, this was a metal cutting.
What, if any, conclusions were you able to draw from that item?
Blood was indicated on this cutting. However, an insufficient amount of DNA was detected, and therefore no further analysis was performed.
Turning your attention to MER 3D-B, were you able to analyze that item?
Yes, this was a lab cutting of stained drywall backing.
What, if any, conclusions were you able to draw from that item?
Blood was indicated on this cutting, but an insufficient amount of DNA was detected, and therefore no further analysis was performed.
Turning your attention to JP 251-1, were you able to analyze that item?
Yes, this was a section of string
And
Blood
what if-
was, I apologize. Blood was indicated on the string, and the DNA profile obtained from the string indicated at least one male contributor. Crystal Sorey and Harmony Montgomery were excluded as contributors to that DNA profile, and Adam Montgomery as well was excluded as a contributor to that DNA profile.
and that was in a later analysis, is that right?
Yes,
And just to clarify, you said the defendant Adam Montgomery was excluded, Crystal Sorey was excluded, and Harmony Montgomery, they were all excluded from that DNA profile.
that's correct.
Understood. Turning your attention to MER 3D-A2, did you have an opportunity to analyze that item?
Yes, this was another lab cutting of stained drywall backing. Blood
What-
was indicated
Go ahead.
on the cutting. And the resulting DNA profile obtained from the cutting indicated a mixture of at least 2 individuals with at least 1 male contributor. However, due to the complex nature of this mixed DNA profile, it was inconclusive for comparison purposes.
Turning your attention to JP 216. JP 216, were you able to analyze
Morning,
that item?
Jen Lou.
If I can, I'd have to go to the report that it was analyzed in. JP 216.
Correct.
Okay, this was a sweater with stains.
Were you able to analyze that item?
Yes, blood was indicated on the sweater, and a sample was collected from a possible blood stain on the wearer's right side for DNA analysis. However, the resulting DNA profile obtained from that sample indicated a mixture of at least 4 individuals with at least 1 male contributor. And due to the complex nature of that mixed DNA profile, it was inconclusive for comparison purposes.
Turning your attention to MER 3D-RL3,
Good morning, Christina
do you have an
Weinman.
opportunity to analyze that item? And if it helps, it's DLI item number 22-07494.01.
Yes,
I agree, Johnny. How the
yes,
hell?
I did have opportunity to analyze this item. It is screws and a rail.
What, if any, conclusions were you able to draw from that item?
From the rail, blood was indicated on the rail, and the result of which was that a sample was collected from the staining. However, an insufficient amount of DNA was detected from that sample, so no further analysis was performed.
I want to turn your attention to a final item, TSC 8. Did you have an opportunity to analyze TSC 8?
I'm sorry, can you give me the DLI item number?
I can have just a moment. It's 22-11851.
Yes, I did perform analysis on this item.
And what was that item, or what is that item?
It is the carpeted floorboard from an Audi.
I see you, Leo. Good
You
morning.
said from an Audi.
Yes.
What, if any, conclusions were you able to draw from that sample?
No blood was indicated on that carpeted floorboard, and a sample was collected from the entire surface of the item for DNA analysis. But no DNA profile was obtained from the sample.
So, Mr. Acro-Rosales, I just want to summarize. You were able to develop a profile from MER 3D-RL13.
Sorry, I need to flip back and see what item that is. Yes, I was.
And that was 4.1 billion times more likely to be Harmony Montgomery and an unknown person.
For one of the samples taken from that item, which was the piece of sheetrock with heavy stains, yes, that was the resulting likelihood ratio.
And when you tested another location on that item, you were able to obtain another likelihood ratio.
That is correct, yes.
Specific with respect to Harmony Montgomery, what was that likelihood ratio?
That likelihood ratio was 1.1 trillion times more likely if that DNA profile had originated from Harmony Montgomery and an unknown person than if it originated from two unknown people.
And you were able to develop a profile on the item MER 3D RL4 and 12.
Yes.
And can you remind the jurors what that what the likelihood ratio was for that item with respect to Harmony Montgomery?
That item was two rails screwed together, and the resulting likelihood ratio in comparing Harmony Montgomery was that it was 1.4 trillion times more probable if the sample originated from Harmony Montgomery than if it originated from an unknown person.
1.4 trillion. Or Ackroyd is Ellis. I have no additional questions for you, Your Honor. I pass the witness.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning.
One of the reasons that states would say a state lab like New Hampshire that does DNA sends items to you or DLI labs
Mhm.
is because you do a different type of DNA analysis than most other places in the country, right?
I'm sorry, I'm not sure what you're asking.
The genotype probabilistic testing.
Yes. So probabilistic genotyping is what is used to perform likelihood ratios. Essentially, that's a combination of statistical methods and biological concepts to help in DNA analysis.
And what that does is, like, complex means more than one, can mean more than one DNA sample, right?
Well, in saying that a DNA profile is complex, that can potentially mean that that sample is from more than one person. That's possible.
It could mean that the DNA sample was somewhat degraded,
That's possible.
and it could mean that there's less of a sample.
That's possible. Yes.
Okay. And there's other reasons that people, well, for the most part, I'm going to call it PGT, probabilistic genotyping. Is that what?
We usually just do PG, but I will understand what you mean if you say that's what PGT means.
Okay, because I will stumble over the words if I have to do it each time. PG is essentially a way to get better information from less DNA or more complex DNA.
Compared to traditional analysis methods, yes.
Okay, so if there was like a finding of two sources on a DNA sample, but the lab wasn't capable of further analysis, it might come to you.
That's possible.
Okay. And probabilistic genotyping is actually a computer algorithm, right?
Computer software is used, yes.
Okay. And it combines all possibilities and runs whether or not the likelihood of this possibility being achieved. Why don't you explain?
Well, essentially, you're asking how a likelihood ratio is performed?
What it means? Yes, how it's performed.
Essentially, the software makes at the start random guesses as to what genetic, well, what I should say, what alleles, so what specific genetic markers apply to each contributor in a mixture, and in what proportion for each of the genetic markers that we look at. And by comparing that, and then for each successive guess that it does blind, it compares to the actual DNA profile, and it can see how closely or how badly it fits the actual data. So as a result of that, it makes successive guesses as it goes through what's called Markov chain Monte Carlo. So essentially, as it's making these random guesses, it does assess whether the next guess is better than the previous guess. And as a result, it kind of narrows in on what the actual genetic alleles, what DNA profile applies to each contributor in a mixture.
And a person who compares DNA profiles can do the same thing, but it would take an astronomical amount of time, right?
A computer can do it in a fraction of the time that I could do it by hand. Yes.
Okay. And when you hit numbers like trillion, billion, things like that, that the DNA probabilistic result is 1.4 billion. You said it's very strong support for the DNA profile matching another person.
I would say that it's very strong support for the proposition that the DNA profile resulted from the person who's being compared, as well as however other unknown individuals are present in that mixture.
Okay. So one of the things is this can't make a match,
I can't conclusively say it's someone's DNA or not. No.
but the likelihood is so high that you might be able to accept it as a match.
I can't say that.
The likelihood that it is that person when we're in the billions and stuff is pretty high.
It is high, yes.
Okay. And you can have likelihood ratios right down to 2 that mean something, right?
Yes,
Because under 2, it's uninformative, I think you said.
that's correct.
Okay. So if we can sort of say it's probably somebody by a probabilistic ratio of 10 versus a billion, the more likelihood that it is that person at a billion is really, really high, right?
Well, a billion is a lot larger than 10, if that's what you mean. Yes.
Okay. And okay. Somebody might walk away from that pretty comfortable that it is the person that the matching says it probably is. The DNA is from that source that the probabilistic ratio says it is.
I can only speak to the statistical weight. I can't
Okay.
tell anyone to come to a conclusion.
So you can't conclusively say that Harmony Montgomery is the source of the DNA on the sheetrock or the rails, but the probability is very, very high.
That's fair to say.
Okay. Now, on the sheetrock, you found a possibility of 2 sources.
Sorry, we're talking about
MER 3D13, RL13.
yes.
Okay. And you weren't quite sure, but that probability was there, right?
I wasn't quite sure about what. I'm sorry.
Whether it was 1 source or 2 sources, but there was enough to raise that possibility.
For the first 2 samples that were taken, yes, it was at least 1 person, and there were some suggestions of it being 2 people, and as a result of that, I interpreted it as 2 people.
Okay. And then when you did the testing on the rails and the analysis there, that was pretty conclusively 1 source?
There was no indication of any other contributor being present in that DNA profile.
Okay, so if the sheetrock and the metal rails came together and the DNA that was on both of them was from the same source, can we conclude that there was only 1 source on the sheetrock?
Well, no, because I can't speak for how people in the past might have touched these various items, or who made what kind of contact, or how DNA came to be on an item. I simply can't speak to the activity that led to DNA ending up on an item of evidence.
Okay, so the possibility that the sheetrock had 2 sources and the metal rails had 1 source. The possibility that the sheetrock had 2 sources still exists, even though the rail had 1 source.
Yes, the DNA results support that.
Okay. And did you receive any profiles from Kayla Montgomery to compare?
Kayla Montgomery? No, we never received a reference for that person.
Okay. So I want to talk about some of the other testing that you did in this case. You reviewed it some of them with the state. And let's talk about JP88, which was the pink sock. And JP, the jury has learned P stands for Pittman, who collected evidence from an Audi. And you found DNA on the child's pink sock, right?
Yes, I did.
Okay. And DNA degrades over time, right?
Yes.
And weather conditions can affect the amount of degradation.
Yes.
And weather meaning extreme hot and extreme cold, right?
Yes, those will both play a factor.
Other environmental factors such as mold and stuff like that might affect DNA degradation.
Yes, that's true.
And the jury has heard the condition that the Audi was in at the time that it was searched. You were able to obtain DNA from the Audi, right?
Are we still speaking of the pink child sock?
JP88, sorry.
I was able to obtain a DNA profile from the sock, yes.
And you were able to exclude Harmony and Adam from that DNA.
In comparing their DNA results by probabilistic genotyping, the statistics supported them being excluded.
Was it in this? It was a very high number, right?
10 likelihood ratio supporting exclusion, 10,000 or greater. We consider that this is the phrasing we use, that they support their exclusion.
And this was well above 10,000.
If you want the exact number, I need to go into the case file.
I don't need to, but it was a lot over 10,000, right?
It was at least 10,000. I don't remember the number exactly from memory.
Okay, but it is a within your realm that strongly supports exclusion.
That's correct.
And you talked about 1 billion strongly supports exclusion earlier on other items.
I believe we were speaking of inclusion when I was.
Okay. So anyway, it strongly supports exclusion on the pink sock, right?
In comparing Harmony Montgomery, Crystal Soria, and Anna Montgomery, yes, the resulting statistics all supported their exclusion from the pink sock.
Okay. So DNA survived the conditions that the jury has heard that the Audi was in, sufficient to make a comparison of DNA and make a determination that supports exclusion.
In this case, yes.
Okay. Now the JP216 was a sweater with stains,
Yes.
and it was an adult sweater with stains.
I actually don't have that information in the reports.
Okay.
What size or
Okay.
what person that sweater is intended for.
And I think the conclusion was at least 4 individuals on that.
For the sample taken from a possible blood stain on the wearer's right side, the resulting DNA profile was a mixture of at least 4 individuals with at least 1 male contributor, but it was due to its complex nature. Yes, it couldn't be used for comparison purposes.
Okay, so you're comfortable with the conclusion that it is at least 4 people contributed to the staining.
I'm comfortable with the conclusion that I got DNA from at least 4 individuals from the sample taken from that stain.
Okay, and that at least one of those individuals was male.
That's correct.
And did you determine if that staining was blood?
Blood was indicated on the sweater. Yeah, but I wasn't able to conclusively identify it as blood.
Okay. And again, blood can survive extreme conditions of very, very hot and very, very cold.
It's possible, and I don't know the exact weather conditions and what other factors might have come into play with where the sweater was found.
Okay. And if a conclusion of different testing was that it was blood on the sweater, you can't say one way or the other if that conclusion was correct or not.
I'm sorry, can you say that again? I'm
If
not sure I
other
understand.
testing revealed blood on that sweater, you can't determine whether that other testing was correct or not.
Well, if my laboratory or I didn't perform that testing, I can't speak for whoever did it.
Okay. And I guess the thing that I'm trying to get to is that DNA and blood, while it can be degraded by many different conditions, it can also survive in many different conditions, right?
That's fair to say, yes.
And it can survive over years.
Possibly. Again, it depends on the specific conditions.
Okay. If I may have a moment.
Yeah, so I think this is, this is a little unexpected. I think we expected Adam's DNA to be the places where Harmony's DNA was, like damn conclusively, and we are not getting that. We're also not getting that Kayla's DNA was in that place either. So basically we have confirmation that it was Harmony, and that corroborates, if that was Harmony, then she was most likely put in the ceiling. Oh gosh, hold on.
SC8. Do you know what those initials stand for?
TSC8, I don't. That was assigned by the New Hampshire authorities.
Okay. And in any event, on there was no blood nor DNA, right?
No blood was indicated from the staining, and sorry, can I just double check
Sure.
the case file quickly?
That's crazy, Mayla's mom.
There was DNA detected on the carpeted floorboard, but there was no, while it went through the DNA process, we weren't able to obtain a DNA profile.
Okay.
at the end.
Okay. No blood, but DNA.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Anything further from the state? Yes.
Yes, we definitely have a positive ID with the fingerprints. So my question would be, what is his explanation for why those fingerprints were where Harmony was decomposing, right? That would be my question there.
Mr. Acro-Dizales, you were asked about the type of testing that DNA Labs International conducts. Do you remember that line of questioning from the defense?
I believe so, yes.
The defense attorney asked you specifically about your lab conducting a different type of DNA analysis than other places in the country. Do you remember that line of questioning?
Yes, it went into probabilistic genotyping, I believe.
And let's talk about probabilistic genotyping. That's a mouthful.
Yes.
Probabilistic genotyping, is that something that's not done in other places in the country?
It's actually pretty standard method at this point. My laboratory certainly isn't the only one in the country that uses it.
And is this a new method?
It's been in use since 2015.
You said that this computer software that you use, it runs the test in no time.
Well, far quicker than I am capable of doing by hand.
And that's my next point. You are able to do this by hand. Is that right?
That's correct, yes.
I want to talk about the likelihood ratios that you were asked about. What threshold is required for very strong support?
So again, going to the verbal scale used to describe likelihood ratios. When I'm able to describe a proposition as having very strong support, that results when a likelihood ratio is 1,000,000 or greater.
You were asked about a second contributor to the source from MER 3D RL 13.
Yes.
I think on direct you said that that second profile was really uninformative. Can you just explain that to the jurors?
So while I could see that there was a second contributor in this mixture, as I think I said earlier, there just wasn't a lot of data of that person. So there was enough for me to see that there was someone there, but not enough for me to feel that I could conclusively identify who that second contributor is.
During your involvement with those pieces of sheetrock, the metal framing, did you receive a known profile for someone, for Detective Scott Riley?
I did not know.
No further questions, Your Honor.
You said that this type of testing, PG, has been, your lab has been around since 2015?
No, it's older than that, but I don't recall the exact year it was established. However, the program used, StarMix, that employs probabilistic genotyping, that's been used in forensic analysis, DNA analysis, since I believe it's 2015.
Okay. And are there more than 8 labs now that apply StarMix?
I believe so, but I would need to check the numbers to be sure.
Okay, so it's growing, but at first, weren't you all the only ones doing it commercially?
That's possible. I actually don't know offhand.
Okay. In any event, it's been verified and validated and everything else, right?
It's a respected and trusted tool for forensic analysis, yes.
Okay. But not necessarily every state has the ability to do it.
Well, investing in new technology, that's an immense, that costs a lot of time, a lot of money, a lot of effort. So yes, it's not everyone uses it as of yet.
And that's why state labs might send it to a private lab to be analyzed rather than doing it themselves.
That's possible.
Okay. And the likelihood ratio, I think a little bit of confusion may exist. Very strong support. You mentioned the term thing 1,000,000, and then earlier 1,000. Do you need 1,000,000 to include somebody?
No, the verbal scale just describes the relative strength of a likelihood ratio. And I believe what you're referencing was when a likelihood ratio is 10,000 or greater supporting exclusion, that we treat that as excluding a reference from a mixture.
Okay. So it's like not even very strong support. Once you hit 10,000, you're excluded.
That is how we treat it, yes.
Okay. And
I'm sorry, just to clarify that point, I can't outright say they aren't there, but just that's what the statistics support. So that's why we use that language.
Okay. And on MER-3D-RL4 through 12, Adam was excluded, right?
Mr. Montgomery?
I'm sorry, yes.
He was excluded from that DNA profile from that item, yes.
But you also believe that that item had one source.
The resulting DNA profile only indicated one person, yes.
Okay. Sorry, I know it's very precise terminology and I'm not being so precise, so I apologize. On MER-3D-RL13, there was, that could have been two people, right?
Well,
Two sources, sorry.
in the first sample taken, it was at least one contributor that I interpreted as two based on ambiguity in the profile.
Okay,
The second sample taken at a future date, that indicated mixture conclusively of at least two people.
oh, my misunderstanding, okay. And then probabilistic testing, it was uninformative as far as Crystal was concerned and limited support that Adam was not a contributor.
We're talking about the second sample taken from a piece of sheetrock.
Yeah.
Or rather, I should say the third. So
9/14/22.
sorry, just to be clear, for the sample that was taken at a later date using a kit that an amplification kit that we received approval for, yes, Crystal Sorry, the likelihood ratio for her to the mixture from there was uninformative, and there was limited support for the proposition that Adam Montgomery was excluded from that mixture.
Okay. And okay, a conclusion that there's probably two sources and Adam Montgomery is probably excluded.
Well, there's limited support.
Okay. And there's no support on the other side that says he's included, right?
That's correct.
Okay. And like I said, that side can go down to two and mean something, right?
Well, at that range, again, we use limited support to make it clear that it's a small number.
Right. Thank you.
Further? All right. You may step down, sir. You may be excused.
Yes.
And you are excused.
I am switching feeds while they transition. So I'm going to say that was better testimony.
I think it makes sense to have our mid-morning break now, so we'll break for 15 minutes. We'll be back at 25 up. All right, please rise for the jurors.
That was better testimony for the defense than the state, in my very
For a minute.
layperson's opinion, from the public of court opinion, even though I feel strongly that Adam Montgomery did this to Kayla, to Harmony, this particular testimony did not confirm that for me. Prints are, but his prints are there. His prints are next, are on some of these sample items, but that doesn't say he was the one who physically killed her, right? As much as I hate to say that, because I feel, but feelings are not facts, unfortunately. I feel that he did this, but that particular testimony did not, take me over the edge on if I was sitting there in there as a jury member. But again, the state has not put on their entire case yet, correct? So, we still have more to go. It is horrible to say. And it's really hard testimony to hear because it's, dealing with whenever they're talking about DNA and bloodstains and everything like that, we're talking about a beautiful, beautiful little girl named Harmony, right? So it's really hard. So all we can do is just continue to watch. Right, exactly. And that's the other thing that's important to note. He's already conceded that he moved her body. So that's, so it seems to me that they knew going in, and they did, because all of this evidence has been turned over to the defense, right? So they were able to prepare for it, right? So the defense was able to see and talk to Adam about, hey, look, they have your prints near where she was. They do not have your DNA. They are not going to be able to get on the stand and confirm 100% that your DNA is mixed with Harmony's and places you exactly where she was decomposing. So let's see, but Lynn, that analyst said that different types of DNA can withstand different environments and blood is stronger than most, but if he didn't bleed and only left a lesser type, what about that? That wouldn't mean he didn't do it. It just means that exactly. I agree. I agree with that. I do agree with that. And they'll have to have that. But the question is, can they convict based on saying, well, this testimony doesn't say he didn't do it. It is a really excellent point, and I'm sure that there are jurors there who will be able to bring that out in the conversation. It's really tough. It's a tough. It's really, really tough. This is why, people with a criminal mindset, and I believe since Adam has Adam is a career criminal, so he has a criminal mindset, and people with a criminal mindset go around saying no body, no crime, right? So he made damn sure they weren't going to find no body. Let's just stipulate he did this, right? Well, he has stipulated, conceded to the moving of the body and all of that, right? So, but what the state's burden is to prove is that he actually killed her, and they don't have that body to be able to do that with. And yes, there are definitely convictions without DNA. Convictions came. I saw a very interesting discussion about, like from different law enforcement, retired law enforcement people and DNA experts, and and then just basically cops that had to work with DNA without DNA for a long time, and there were convictions without DNA before, right? Usually it was fingerprints and things like that. Now we've gotten used to there being DNA, like conclusive DNA evidence that, definitely places, that killer on a weapon or on a body. But when we don't have it, it seems much more difficult to prove all the other types of evidence, for all that other types of evidence to have some sort of weight in the conviction. So in 2013, there was a study done on no body homicides. It says there is an 89% conviction rate, right? So you can get convictions with no body. Absolutely. It is possible. It's just a tougher hurdle to go over. And it does corroborate parts of Kayla's testimony. It absolutely does. She said, she was stored in the ceiling there, and there are her, blood and composition fluids there, right? So it's really tough. Now, I want to just show you guys who has testified so far and who hasn't, based on me going through all the testimony. I cross-referenced with my own notes, but also with reports. There's a really good WMUR is blogging about this every day, and they list every witness that gets up and everything like that. So I've cross-referenced that, and I know this is hard to see, but I wish there was a way I could show it to you. Solo layout? Let me see. Nope. Sorry. I need to go back to this layout. So on the first page of the list, there are 9 of these pages I'm about to show you. Okay. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 people who have testified, including Anthony Badero, Christina Lubin, Courtney Garcia, Crystal Sori, and Dimitros Saros. All right. So those are the people who have testified from that first part of the list. Nobody from this part of the list have testified yet. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 with this list, which includes Katie Murrin, Kayla Montgomery, Kevin Montgomery, Kimberly Frayne, Matthew Gendron, Michelle Rafferty, and Nicholas Ahern. So that's 12. And then 13 with Brian O'Leary on this page. 14, 15, 16, 17, including Neil Pentinen, Rachel Radovich. I lined this out because they put her. Oh gosh, now I'm losing count because but anyway, there's 4 people from this page, including Raymond Lammy, Neil Pentinen, Rachel Radovich, Raymond Lammy, and Scott Riley. Just Yara, this was the sheetrocker that came in yesterday and was up there for like 2 minutes. And then the law enforcement witnesses, these people have not testified yet. We have heard from Joseph Tucker. We have heard from Paul Montre. Alan was the one who was just testifying right now, the one who just finished testifying. Katie Swango, Kevin McMahon, and Martin Orlowitz. So far they're pretty much sticking to the list of witnesses they put there. So just wanted to show that to you. I'm just going to check chat for a moment. Yeah. Mary Jane says, what makes me second guess what it happened in the car, because Kayla's saying he put her in the bag in broad daylight. Interesting. Yeah. Yep. I put myself on, if you were to draw a spectrum of, knowledge that goes from one line to the other, that includes, at the one extreme end, as much knowledge of the case as you can, and on the other extreme end, no knowledge of the case whatsoever, which is hopefully, or at least what a lot of the juries are, the situation the jury is going to be in. I'm in the middle of that because I came in more as like of an observer, not someone who has been covering this case. And then you have other people who are in this chat who have a much more detailed knowledge of this case, right? So, you know, when you come from one extreme, it's really hard to see it from the other extreme of, you know, not having any knowledge of the case and then seeing all of this testimony through those eyes, right? So Johnny says the fact that they found physical evidence to support parts of her story also works in her favor. Absolutely. Speaking of Kayla. So all this to say that, you know, the state does have a heavy burden. They do not have a body to work with. So they're bringing in all these witnesses. I just showed you the long list of witnesses and who has testified and who hasn't. And, you know, we shall see how many more of those witnesses come in. We don't have very many experts left to come in. We have not heard from Alicia Maracas and Constance Fisher that I know of. So, and we haven't heard from several law enforcement as well. So we'll see. It'll be very, very interesting to see how this unfolds, see what additional testimony comes in. You know, usually people are really anticipating the testimony from the DNA evidence because, you know, you want that smoking gun, right? We were looking for that smoking gun because we feel that Adam did this, right? But that particular testimony that we just saw does not help. Adam has not even been in the courtroom, Karen Neff, to be on the stand. So no. And with this, you know, this type of DNA evidence, it'll be really interesting to see if they, as the trial goes on, and whether there's anything stronger to bring in, whether there's anything stronger to talk about. It'll be just really interesting to see what strategy they use to decide whether they think that Adam should testify. He may not need to testify. And usually it is counterindicated, or it is not recommended for suspects in cases like these to testify in their own defense. There are certain circumstances when it's better than the others. He's working on his wedding dress right now. So it is that's why that's why it's so important for us to really, you know, watch these trials and see the, you know, judicial process take place, and why it's so important. Come over here, Steve. Why it's so important for all the, you know, for anybody who's testifying, anybody who's presenting, you know, presenting a case or defending a client on a case, they need to be as precise as possible. They need to be as precise as possible. And so that's why, you know, it drives me crazy when you see other court processes that are so much more sloppy, and there's pro se litigants and they're like, I'm about to pull up my phone and show you this. I'm about to pull up my phone and show you this amazing evidence. And the judge allows it instead of sticking to, you know, the due process that's been set forth by the court. So Yeah, I was I think that's a good point, Jamie Lee. You say it looks to me like the trial is going ahead of schedule. I don't see them calling 79 witnesses. It looks like they're going in order. Just got through with all the DNA. Yeah, well, Jamie Lee, I think that's where we expected more confirmation of his DNA in that ceiling. And what the DNA expert just testified to is they can't confirm his DNA. It doesn't mean it wasn't there. It does not mean it wasn't there. It's that he couldn't confirm it. And so the jury really has to talk about that. They confirm the prints, but they can't confirm and he has stipulated to being part of moving the body. He's conceded to that. He hasn't pled guilty to that. And that's another point of confusion that I think a lot of people, including myself, have been in is what does this mean? This concession of evidence, not concession of evidence and things like that. Let me see. I want to see if I pulled up a screenshot. That explains this. But I'm not seeing it right here. Anyway. As we wait for court to get back in session and look at the lovely packages over there, of evidence and the lovely bailiff or court guard security. Yep, I agree, Lil Red. They can't just say, well, they can't say it was Adam's DNA, so we're just going to assume it was because there were other male profiles there. That does not. Now, it depends also. We also have to consider what the actual charges are. It doesn't it could mean involuntary manslaughter and not, there's a difference between something happening. The difference between involuntary manslaughter and for lack of a better way for how specifically New Hampshire says it, and premeditated murder, right? um I just chuckled right now because my dog just did a big old snore, and I was like, I wonder if you all can hear that. He is conceding to moving the body, so that explains why his print was there. You don't have to. I don't think, Chopper, you have to convince people that from a court of public opinion perspective, Adam did this. Not me. You don't have to convince me at all. Nope, you don't have to convince me. I'm looking at through the lens of.
Everybody ready for the jury?
Yes.
Please rise for the jurors.
I can't. I had to take down the picture that I uploaded of my dog Johnny because I needed to upload other things, and there's only so much room to upload things into StreamYard. So I might be able to do that later. But I wanted to show all the screens of showing who testified and who didn't, and that took up room. Right. Lil Red, I don't think that is what's on the table though. it's not on the table whether it's premeditated or intentional. What's on the table is whether it was caused by him, either not by neglect or something else.
Please be seated. State may call its next witness.
Thank you, Your Honor. The state calls Miss Emily Watson, Miss Emily Thompson to the stand.
Emily Thompson. They are calling Emily Thompson.
Watch your step in the courts as you walk up there. Ms. Thompson, if you would please remain standing just for a brief moment. Would you please raise your right hand? Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you will give this jury will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I swear it.
Thank you. Please feel free to have a seat. Ms. Thompson, as we're being recorded here today, would you please state your full name and then spell both your first and your last name for the record?
Emily Thompson, EmilYThompson.
And Ms. Thompson, currently, what state are you living in?
Maryland,
And back in 2020, what state were you living in?
New Hampshire,
What city were you living in New Hampshire?
Manchester.
And let me ask you briefly, just so we can understand a little bit about your background. How far did you go in school?
I graduated in 2020.
From high school?
College.
From college?
Yes.
And what did you graduate with? What degree?
Bachelor's of Fine Arts degree in creative writing.
And let me ask you, back in the winter of 2020, so I'm talking about January, February, March of 2020, where were you employed?
Portland Pie Company here in Manchester.
How long were you working for Portland Pie Company?
I worked for them on and off for about 5 years. I started in 2015 up through the time the branch closed in 2020.
And that was what, right after COVID started, is that right?
We shut down just before COVID,
Just
shut
before.
everything else down.
So during your time there, what did you do at Portland Pie Company?
I was a delivery driver.
In the winter of 2020, let me ask you, did you ever work with an individual by the name of Adam Montgomery?
I did, yes.
And what did he do there at that restaurant?
I believe he was a dishwasher.
Did you ever see Adam Montgomery there with a bag in the walk-in cooler?
I think I did, but I couldn't say with any absolute certainty.
And what do you think you remember of that?
I believe I recall him either coming into the walk-in or leaving the walk-in with a bag.
Where was this cooler?
It was in the kitchen, between the dishwashing room and the exit into the main dining area.
And correct me if I'm wrong, it was my understanding that there were almost two different areas where you could be. There's the basically the ground floor, and then there was a basement area as well with additional storage. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So were there any other coolers down in the basement, or just this one on the ground floor you're talking about in the main dining area?
There was a walk-in in the basement. That was where alcohol would be stored, beer, wine, etc.
And so which cooler are we talking about then? The one on the main floor or the one down in the basement?
Main floor.
Main floor. And I believe you said a minute ago you thought you saw him carrying it either in or out?
Correct. It's been several years, so my memory is a bit hazy.
Did you yourself store personal bags inside coolers at Portland Pie Company?
No, I did not.
And how many times do you believe that you may have seen him doing this, bringing it in or out of this cooler?
Would have been just once.
Just one occasion?
Yeah.
Okay. And again, you worked there until it closed, is that correct?
Correct.
Just a moment, please, Your Honor. Thank you very much for your time. I don't have any further questions for you, but I believe defense counsel may have a few.
Okay.
We do not.
Okay. Questions? You may step down.
Thank you.
We'd ask the witness to be excused, please, Your Honor.
Any objection?
No, Your Honor.
The witness is excused.
Your Honor, at this time, the state calls Mr. Cameron Gibney to the stand.
Cameron Gibney.
Good morning, Mr. Gibney. If you would kindly remain standing just for a brief moment, would you please raise your right hand, sir? Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you give this jury will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Thank you. Please feel free to have a seat. Mr. Gibney, as we're being recorded here today, would you please state your full name and spell both your first and your last name for the record?
Yes. Cameron Gibney, CameronGibney.
And Mr. Gibney, would you tell us what town do you currently reside in?
Hooksett, New Hampshire.
Hooksett, New Hampshire. Okay. And might need you to just scoot the seat in just a little bit more close to the mic.
Is that better?
Yep, that's
Okay.
perfect. Thank you. And how long have you been living in Hooksett?
For about 3 years now, originally from Manchester, but
You said originally from Manchester. How long did you live in Manchester before you moved to Hooksett?
for about 15 plus years.
Let me ask you, are you currently employed?
I am.
Okay. Where do you work?
I work over at Manchester Music Mill,
And what do you do for them?
pro audio and installation.
Prior to that, do you have any sort of work experience in the restaurant business?
I do.
What is that?
So prior to that, I worked at Portland Pie in Manchester.
Were you working there in the winter of 2020? And by winter, I mean January, February, and March of 2020.
I did, yes.
What did you do at the Portland Pie Company? What were your job duties?
So I was originally a server, and then I became front of house manager about maybe six or so months after that.
As front house manager, let's say server, I imagine you're serving people food and waiting on them, correct?
Mhm.
Front house manager, what does that job entail?
So that job entailed doing taking care of the front of basically the servers and the bartenders and anything that happened in the front as far as management wise.
Did you ever meet a person by the name of Adam Montgomery there?
I did.
And how did you meet him?
Through work there. He ended up getting hired on a little bit. I would say a little bit probably before I became manager in the front. I did see him, and that's how I know him from.
Do you know what his job duties were, what you saw him doing for the business?
Yes, he was originally in the back in the kitchen area. I believe he did prep and cooked as far as pizza and food.
Just give me permission to approach you.
Yes, you may.
I'm going to show you exhibit from United States 101. Do you recognize this person?
I do.
Who do you recognize him to be?
Adam Montgomery?
So that's the same person that you worked with?
Yes.
And in the winter of 2020, first of all, when did that restaurant close?
It closed, I believe, I am not 100% sure. I don't remember when it closed. I was there prior to that, a week before it closed, but I'm not too certain when it actually closed off the top of my head.
Let me ask, was it just kind of before the beginning of the COVID lockdowns or afterwards?
It was before.
Before, okay. And in the winter of 2020, did you ever see the defendant at Portland Pie Company with a bag?
I did.
Okay. And where did you see him with this bag?
Inside the actual restaurant and around the restaurant itself. Also, I've seen him inside of our walk-in cooler that we used to have. That was inside where the kitchen area was.
A walk-in cooler where the kitchen area was?
Yes.
Okay. And which floor was that kitchen area cooler on? The main floor or the basement?
Main floor.
Main floor. What did you see the defendant, Mr. Montgomery, doing with this bag?
He always would just place it inside the walk-in cooler on the lower shelf. Sometimes he would move it to a different location, but it was mainly on the lower left-hand side inside the cooler.
And I'd like to show you what's marked State's Exhibit 52.
Mhm.
Do you recognize this bag, sir?
I do.
Okay. What does this bag look like?
It looks like the bag that was inside the cooler.
Is this the bag that you saw Adam Montgomery moving inside the cooler?
Correct.
How many times did you see him moving this bag?
Either when he left or when he arrived to Portland Pie.
But it was more than once, I think.
Correct.
Where in the cooler did you see him put the bag?
It was through the actual walk-in itself, door to the left lower shelf is where it was always located. So how it sat was the door was like this. You walked around. There was a door to the right. The walk-in cooler opened, and then to the left of the cooler on the lower shelf, because there were like grates that were typically in there for like tomatoes and stuff.
Okay.
It was typically on the bottom shelf.
What else would be stored on that bottom shelf?
So it was we had like mustard and just a bunch of other condiments that were typically down there.
Did you ever see anyone else handling this bag besides him?
No,
Did you ever bring bags inside and store them in the cooler at Portland Pie Company?
no,
And do you know of any other employees that have brought bags such as that one inside Portland Pie Company and stored them in the cooler?
I do not.
Thank you, Mr. Gibney. I have no further questions for you. I believe defense counsel may have a few.
We do not. All right, sir, you may step down.
Okay, so that was two different former co-workers of Adams who saw him bring the bag in. One saw
Any objection? All right, sir,
him
you're
bring it in at least once.
excused.
This guy saw several times.
With regards to the state's next witness, it would be appropriate to take up the defendant's
okay. Council approach.
Yeah, it does seem surprising that no one asked if they saw him bring this bag in several times. You know, I mean, so the thing is not everybody thinks like a true crime follower or somebody who, you know, knows how dirty people can be. Not everybody thinks through that lens. And yeah, you're not supposed to put personal items in a cooler mixed with people's food and stuff like that. That is sloppy as hell. That's sloppy as hell in terms of the restaurant's management. I wonder what they're sidebarring about right now. It just sounds to me like they were just, good morning, Green Eyes, good to see you. It just sounds like they were not paying a lot of attention. This guy was paying attention. Yeah, I agree, Lil Red. They're not paying they're paying attention to what Adam's doing, but not asking him, what is that, dude? But it just goes to show you what else is being stored in these commercial freezers at restaurants. I mean, that's a scary thought. Maybe that's why that branch closed. I don't know. I don't know. You know, lots of people have different boundaries. Lots of people are like, oh, I'm not going to pry. I don't want to ask him a nosy question like that. Other people would be like, what the hell is in there? You know, it's just people, there's people all across the spectrum. By the way, Caroline, from your chat earlier about what you said about TNT's channel, she's not even there streaming herself. She has somebody else operating her channel, I can tell. Anyway, back to this. It is really disgusting to think that a food company employee brought human remains of his child in and out of a freezer day by day. Day by day. And no, and no, he's not, for anybody who is wondering, he has not been in court the entire time this trial has been on. He was there for jury, maybe one day of jury selection, voir dire. There was, on the second day of trial, there was a report that he flipped out when he had to be strip searched in order to go in and out, and he hasn't been back since. And
The court is what I'm gonna do is I'm not gonna send you to lunch yet. The parties have raised a legal issue that the court needs to review with the lawyers. That's not a matter for the jury's consideration. So at this time, we're gonna take a break. Depending on where we land, we'll determine whether or not we come back, we hear testimony, or whether or not the timing is such that I let you go to an early lunch. So at this point, we're just gonna call it a break. So have a drink of water, use the restroom. I'm not exactly sure how long this will take us. So just be patient, please. Thank you so much. All rise for the jurors.
I wonder how much of this break we'll get to see. This judge tends to close the courtroom when they're about to discuss things, which is extremely frustrating. But it looks like they're going to take a break.
I do want to read it before I hear arguments, so I'm going to step off the bench, read what you've written, and then I'll hear arguments from both sides. Okay?
Thank you.
They are going to make arguments, and I do want to hear whatever arguments, so I'm going to keep it here. They're going to, what they're going to do is file a motion in limine. I'm not sure exactly what the motion is. It might be about a witness that's about to testify and whether there's immunity involved and things like that. Oh, really, Caroline? Yeah. So the time of court was 9:30. So it'll be interesting to see if there was a continuance or they set a date for a trial. But we won't know till the docket is updated. At least I won't know till the docket is updated or somebody else, she says something or somebody else says something. Yeah, I would hope so, Christina. She says, I bet you know if there's another branch of the Portland Pie Company, they're going to go in for inspections of those freezers now. I mean, come on. I would imagine that by this point in time, they've already had to do look at this situation. Seriously, because they knew it would come out in trial as well. Right. But for anyone who's just joining us, so far we've had testimony from a DNA expert that basically, if I were to put it in a win column for one or the other, was a win for the defense because they were not able to confirm DNA, next to where they were able to confirm Harmony's DNA. But then they started bringing in more witnesses about seeing Adam, moving the body around and things like that. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's I would hope that anybody watching this who works for a restaurant is now going to be more curious about what people are bringing in and out of a freezer or even anywhere in the premises. Why are they bringing a bag in and out and putting it near where food is stored, where it could contaminate any any point along the chain of, food prep process. Caroline says a local restaurant was closed. They found men's underpants in with the with the vegetables. My God. And it was an expensive restaurant. Oh my God. Well, that is why we do have health inspectors. That is why we have that is why we have health inspectors. But they clearly have a backlog. Oh, I didn't see that, Caroline. Domino's in Japan fired a guy spitting in the dough. I'm kind of thinking the underpants weren't clean, and that's why they were hidden. Yeah, I think they are going to go on the record as soon as, so basically the judge said, I'm going to step out. You guys read and prepare for your arguments. I will come back and I will hear your arguments. They're taking a break because they need to, the judge needs to hear a motion in limine, or just a motion. I don't know if it's in limine. In limine is during trial that they hear. I'm not sure if this motion was filed before the trial started or not, but they need to hear arguments for a motion. And I think it's probably that they need to hear these arguments before another witness comes on. It's possible that the defense has filed some sort of motion about the trial continuing, but this is not usually the point at which a motion for default judgment comes in. It usually is when the state has closed their case. It's possible that the defense is being super aggressive and trying to motion now after the DNA expert submit, they feel that they have a win from the DNA expert. But again, not having been part of that entire system of working in the court and knowing all of the processes and procedures and when things happen, when they shouldn't happen, and also not knowing, every single thing that has come up for argument in this case, it's hard for me to predict that. Kathy says she's never going to eat again. I know all of this testimony at the very least makes one sick. Makes one absolutely sick. And, from a court of public opinion side of things, okay, from the court of opinion, public opinion side of things, this is the way my thinking goes. If a man is willing and able to carry around the corpse of his child and store it in various places, and then dispose of it such that we never find it, then allow her to be considered, to go unnoticed for 2 years until finally somebody goes, where the hell's Harmony? And things don't come out until, 2 years after she's gone. If a guy's willing to do those things, do we really doubt that he's willing to actually kill her? I mean, I don't think, I wouldn't put it past him. He's a career criminal. So I wouldn't put any of that past him. Unfortunately, that is not what what a court conviction is made of. That's not what a court conviction is made of. So yeah, I do believe he did. And I would personally like to see him convicted. because I feel like he did this, right? But I'm also trying to analyze it from the side of, has the state met their burden of proof? And that will come down to the jury instructions. This isn't his first border, though. I think you mean charge. Is that what you mean, Stephanie? This isn't his first border, though. Maybe I'm misunderstanding you. Yep, not even close to being normal. I agree, Gil. I agree, Gil. I did that twice now. I agree, Green Eyes. And if you were here earlier, I wanted to correct something that I said at the end of yesterday's stream. I want to correct something from yesterday's stream. When we were listening to the print analyst, he said something about Kayla's prints, and I misunderstood it to mean that he detected Kayla's prints. He did not detect Kayla's prints. He had known samples of her prints to compare with. Hey, something to talk about. So he had, Kathy. Rapper got the quick zap. I mean, I have no time for these assholes. I just don't. So anyway, I just wanted to make sure I made that perfectly clear, that the print tech that the print expert that testified yesterday did not say that he has Kayla's fingerprints or handprints anywhere. It's that he had her known print example to compare with, and that was that. I missed that tiny distinction, so I apologize for passing information that had some inaccuracy. Christina says, my enhanced care facility has inspection every 2 years, and I only have 3 elders in my care. They always check my fridges. I still am in shock that he did that. I'm in shock that anyone could think to even do that. And I was listening, I was lurking on Alex and Jen's recap last night, and gosh, shoot. I got distracted by a comment, and now I need to remember what I was about to say about that. What I was about to say about that. Sorry, I'm still checking. Okay, Jen Lu. I'm sorry to have disappointed you. Let me just put out a general disclaimer here. I do make mistakes. I definitely do make mistakes. My memory is not what it used to be, and it has been affected by my mental illness. So I'm constantly having to go back and double check myself. And also I'm multitasking here, looking at chat, listening to the testimony, pulling up things to, show you during the break and things like that. So that's why I'm always willing to be corrected. You guys are, as long as it's done respectfully, that's all I ask for. Right. I mean, I agree, Jen. We all make mistakes. That's a thing. Oh, thank you, Green Eyes. That's very sweet. Yes, remember to hit the thumbs up. Thank you for the reminder, hippie chick. Consider becoming a member. I'll post links in a minute when I'm not talking. And I do appreciate you all being here with me. I enjoy our conversations here. I really do. And I appreciate you all being respectful in chat with each other and with me, and being respectful wherever you go. I always, there's no reason not to be able to have a civil conversation about all of this stuff. If people have different opinions than us, it's not up to us to change their
All right,
opinion.
I've
All
had
right,
an
let's listen.
opportunity to review your filing, Attorney Smith. I also reviewed my original order on this motion. So I'll hear from you hitting the high points, but you don't have to repeat everything that you've got in there.
Thank you, Your Honor. Yes, in the motion I laid out, the original filing and the argument, and the state provided the unsworn affidavit of a detective with regard to what Kayla Montgomery purportedly had said in the past. And it's not like there were quotes or anything like that.
The reality of it is, at where we are right now, you can focus on
Correct.
on what testimony we have, and they can provide officer proof for what testimony they think is coming. I think it's not especially relevant if there are things within Ray Hill's affidavit that are not identical.
So, right, which is why I say I'm renewing, because the testimony did not come out as purportedly she would testify at trial. At trial, she was asked again about tools, and she talked about a conversation with Adam at her mother's, and during that conversation, she testified that Adam was apparently interested in her mother's grinder, or she may have only called it a power tool, and said that he wanted to take it to use on Harmony's body. And she then identified the State's Exhibit 63 as the item that she recalled her mother had. And if you will recall, 63 is the fuel grinder, Milwaukee red, and she identified her initials on the bottom of the photograph. Turns out that this was not something that she had initialed at a prior recording. It was during the trial prep that apparently that photograph was given to her. And as far as I know, before that prep, there was no mention of a fuel grinder ever. And I believe that photograph may have been part of the photographs. We introduced photograph defendant's eye, that was a circular saw that she identified as the image closest to the image of the power tool that she had seen in the house. It was an old power tool, and it was corded and looked most like the circular saw.
I'm sorry, she saw in which house?
Sorry, Union Street apartment. And she identified, was shown a miter saw, which is defendant's Exhibit H, and said, no, that was not the saw that she saw. I do not know if State's Exhibit 63 was included in the photographs that she was shown back then. I assume that it was, because I think they had already collected this Home Depot information. But nevertheless, they go to a prep session with a saw, a photograph of a saw that she has never seen. She tells them this story, and on the stand, she tells them that she talked Adam out of stealing her mother's fuel grinder. So in regard to that, Christine Lubin testified she does not have a grinder. She's never had a grinder. She knew what the picture was of, and no, she had never had one. So the credibility with regard to that testimony has several layers, but essentially none. Then she also testified about tools, and she did not see tools other than the scissors. She testified with regard.
She testified that she saw tools in the apartment, right?
The one that looked most like the chainsaw was in a box under the cupboard.
Okay, so it's not that she didn't see tools.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
What she identified as the corded circular saw was in a box under the kitchen. She did not see any tools other than the scissors in the bathroom, and it was a small bathroom. The only thing that she saw there, other than using the scissors, was a bag of lime. She testified that the photograph of the lime was the most similar to what she saw. She did not say that she could identify the lime, but the lime in the picture, and I forgot to pull it out, was the one most like what she saw. She did not say that it was a 40-pound bag of lime, and she did not see tools. She did not hear tools. She didn't see tools outside before or after Adam was in the shower for a time period with the body while she was out. She did say she didn't hear a power tool. She did say her neighbor's music was loud, but I think common sense with regard to power tools, if a power tool was used, it would have been heard. She did not, and she admitted that she was there when the body was in the bag and Adam was trying to zip it up. She did not claim that there was any dismemberment, as the state put it in their opening. She didn't say anything about pieces. I'm sorry, it's sort of grotesque to talk about, but she didn't mention anything other than lime and shower in the bathroom as far as activities that she was aware of. And tools, again, that she was aware of were only the scissors and the circular saw underneath the thing that was old. She also, although she claimed that she limited her time in the bathroom, she also testified that she saw Adam put the body in a trash bag on the floor in lime. She later retracted and said, no, he said that. She didn't see it. But in any event, she testified to both. So if that tool was there, she would have seen it. She did not. She assisted in closing the bag, didn't see any sign of dismemberment or tools at that point. She never ever saw any new tools in the house. And you may recall from the original motion, what was purchased in the receipt by some unknown person included extra blade and extra battery. And so she didn't see anything new tool related in the apartment at Union. She testified about, I think she testified about a call for service for taking care of the bathroom. In any event, the state will have, I believe, a witness to talk about a call for service.
So they did introduce the document regarding the call for service, so that's in.
Okay, and I think that she mentioned that, no, so I guess they're not going to call the guy for a call for service, but they have a document. I think she described a call for service, and if she did, she didn't do anything about that call for service vis-a-vis the events in the shower. So we don't know if the events in the shower happened. And she moved into the apartment at the end of February. And I think she said the 21st or the 22nd. And so there were a number of days prior to that call for service. And she did not say that it was the next day or anything, or the same day or whatever the complaint was. So we don't know if a day or two or three or four went in between.
I think the other thing you mentioned that you raised was the bank records. Do you want to
Yes.
discuss that?
Okay, and the bank records, they have bank records that show a withdrawal from Citizen Bank. The state put in its motion that Citizen Bank is about 0.4 miles from the Home Depot. I believe one of the officers will probably be able to testify that Union Street is over a mile from Home Depot. There's no evidence whatsoever of anybody giving a ride to the Montgomerys. There is testimony that when they got rides somewhere, it was sometimes through a service. There has been testimony about the number of friends, acquaintances of the Montgomerys that the police went out to talk to. It can be developed more, but there were a lot. There was also testimony about the crime tip line, and that people, as this was being publicized in the media, the search for harmony, tips were coming in from the crime line, and they were following up on that. And there has been a discussion about the amount of media exposure. Nobody called in with a tip of a man walking down from Home Depot with a 40-pound bag of lime, a box of a power tool, and the like, nor has anyone called in who is perhaps an acquaintance of the Montgomery saying, oh, by the way, I think I gave him a ride. So there's no evidence whatsoever connecting the $500 purchase to a $400 purchase of lime at Home Depot. And finally, not in the motion, is that there's no evidence that the lime was purchased at Home Depot. There are other places that sell lime. And I believe the testimony will be that they only searched Home Depot. So there is no connection. The state in their opening alleged that Harmony was dismembered by Adam, and they are seeking to introduce these tools to suggest that Mr. Montgomery had tools to cause that event, where there is no connection. And without that connection, the prejudice of this evidence so far outweighs any probative value that it should be precluded.
All right, thank you. I'll hear from the state. Go ahead.
As we said in the opening, press, you would not say dismembered. Most of what you just heard was the same argument that's been presented before with regards to the time. Attorney Smith just mentioned with regards, and I'll just try to go backwards in order so I can address the different points coming on. Yes, that the Citizens Bank is across the street from the Home Depot on South Willow Street. There are many different ways to get back and forth in this city that don't involve calling a ride or necessarily a ride for it. The fact that there's no testimony or a tip of a person carrying a bag of lime and a power tool in a bag that came in does not make it any less relevant or less admissible for this Home Depot purchase to occur. Let's go back to the timing. The Citizens Bank withdrawal is on the 26th. A matter of minutes, less than an hour, minutes later, at the Home Depot across the street, there is this purchase of lime. This purchase of lime with power tools by cash. Other purchases of lime that were made for the entire month of February, with the exception of one other one, were accounted for, and the other one was outside of this time frame. It was far later than after the O'Connell Lodge stay. We believe that Harmony was placed somewhere in U-Haul, which we were going to get to in our witnesses later on. The testimony of cross-examination was just cited to you, but not necessarily the testimony of direct. Specifically, Kayla Montgomery testified she did not see the body once it was in the bag. She also did testify that she saw that the bag was dismembered. There was no testimony on that. The call for service, Your Honor, the defense immediately brought up the fact that there was a call for service that had been introduced. Just to clarify, that's a call for service back at the Lake Avenue address, the Fit Shelter. The call for service to Union Street, which is the day after this Home Depot purchase, for a tub drain that needed to be snaked as well as repaired, that will be coming in through a witness later on this afternoon who works for maintenance at 644 Union Street, where they were living at the time of the Home Depot purchase, at the time of the bank withdrawal, 45 minutes across the street from the Home Depot for this Home Depot purchase. With regards to photographs of what Ms. Montgomery testified to, legal testimony was that the identification of the identification of the grinder saw, and it is important to use the right term. As Christina Lubin testified to and as described, that is a grinder, the photos that were shown. There's no chainsaw here, so I don't know where the term chainsaw is coming from, but there's no chainsaw that's been involved. We've talked about a miter saw, which is also known as a box saw. We've also talked about a cordless circular saw, and then we've talked about this grinder. Specifically, the testimony of Kayla Montgomery was that the grinder was a box she recalled seeing before, and I believe in her testimony at one point saying that she had seen it somewhere before, and then she recalled seeing it at her mother's house, she believed, and that Adam Montgomery stated that that was the type of saw that he wanted to use when he was talking about dismembering her, so that she had seen a saw, a new saw in the box. And Ms. Lubin's testimony was that she did not own any such saw. It's this grinder. It is not for woodworking, which is what she testified she did in her spare time and on the side. So she doesn't own it. So the testimony we have is that Kayla Montgomery has seen it in a box. Adam Montgomery has talked about seeing that in a box and wanting to use that for dismembering, not that it's one that Christina Lubin owned. Yes, she did testify that there was a circular saw that was there. She was very adamant with regard to it being a corded saw, not a cordless circular saw. But she identified the bag of lime when she was shown that by detectives, not at the proffer session, but back before in March of 2023. She was shown that photo of the lime, and from that SKU, the SKU, which is the identification number that a business uses to identify that particular item in their inventory and to make sales, and reports the sales of those on the receipt. She identified that bag with that SKU, and that SKU matched up to the purchase of lime that was made from the Home Depot less than an hour after the withdrawal of cash from their ATM account across the street. Yes, the Citizens Bank was a little over a mile away from the street, but there are a number of different ways that the defendant could have gotten there. Could have walked, could have taken a bus, could have used a private service to get there. The relevance is that it's their account that the money is being drawn from. That 45 minutes later, approximately so, it is a cash purchase that is made. It is one of only two cash purchases that is made of lime with the same bag that she identified, with the same SKU that she identified. That, oh, look, if we go to the receipt, we see that there is this grinder, the same type that she said, and she remembers seeing with the defendant talked about lime. All of those goes in to make this particular purchase of lime, the purchase from Home Depot, admissible. And the jury can give it whatever weight that it deserves. The defendant certainly has plenty of different things that we can cross-examine on, but this is a question about admissibility, not about weight. And when it comes to admissibility, 403, as the court has ruled two previous times with regards to this, this is admissible, and there hasn't been anything about testimony that's coming to change the admissibility.
All right. I don't think it's necessary to recount all of this. I don't even think it's a close call. I think the state has sufficient evidence to show that it's relevant, that it has any tendency to make a fact more or less probable than it would be without the evidence, and that the fact is of consequence in determining the action. There's no question about that. There has been significant testimony regarding the saws. It's not essential that she have identified the exact saw. She saw a saw in her own apartment, or the grinder. I mean, I think that there is sufficient evidence. There is evidence related to or there will be related to the bank account. I think the state has made an offer of proof, the proximity to the Home Depot purchase, the facts that were set forth in the original motion related to what the police did to narrow the issue related to the to the both the cash withdrawal and the use of the cash for the purchase. She testified that although she didn't hear the power tool being used, that there was music. She wasn't in there the whole time. I think that there is sufficient evidence to allow the state to bring in the information from the Home Depot. So for all the reasons that I said in my original order, for the reasons set forth by the state today, and after having reviewed the motion to reconsider is denied. All right, everybody ready to proceed?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right. Please rise for the jurors.
Okay. So I just want you all to know that is a very, very
I
normal.
guess for the record, I should also say that I think it's admissible under 403.
That is a very, very normal part of the judicial process. That was a motion to reconsider that was already denied. It had been fart ghost. Yeah, ghost fart. Hey, where are those ghost farts coming from? This motion had already been submitted and denied, but the defense tried to resubmit it, and the judge is basically like, there's no contest. The defense has the right and the ability to file motions in the middle of trial to have things reconsidered or to ask for a default judgment. I would not be surprised, because the defense is trying to be rather aggressive. I would not be surprised if after the state.
You may be seated. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for your patience. The legal issue that needed to be resolved has been resolved, and we can resume the testimony. The state may call its next witness.
Thank you, Brandon. The state calls Eugene Wasson to the stand.
Okay, Eugene Wasson comes to the stand. So I would not be surprised, considering how aggressive the defense is, if they did not file a motion to for default judgment or whatever it's called there, trying to get a verdict, a motion for directed verdict after the state closes its case, after they rest. That is a very normal part of the process. Nothing to be nervous about. It's just something that the defense needs to do to represent their client. And it does feel like a waste of time.
You can remain standing. You raise your right hand. You swear
I
that
agree.
the testimony that you'll provide to the jury will be the truth and nothing but the truth, under the pains and penalties of perjury. Yes. You can have a seat and make yourself comfortable. And when you're ready, Mr. Wasson, if you can just start by giving us your name, stating it and spelling it for the record.
Okay. Real name is Eugene Robert Wasson, Eugene, Robert, Robert. Nickname Bob. Last name Wasson.
And you go by Bob, is that right? Okay. Well, Mr. Wasson, can you begin by just telling the jurors where you work?
I work at Home Depot, Manchester, Londonderry. So I was a Met supervisor. So
Do you travel between those two locations for work?
I now transferred to the Londonderry location. So I'm in that location now.
At some point, were you working in Manchester?
Yes.
So what are the dates of that? When did you transfer to Londonderry?
I transferred to Londonderry last April of 2023. Was in Manchester for 11 and a half years.
11 and a half years. What role do you currently hold at Home Depot?
I'm just a Met associate now. I mentally had to take a step down and became an associate instead of management.
Before you took that step down, you mentioned management.
Mhm.
What were your roles and responsibilities as manager at Home Depot?
I had vast different roles. Last position that I had was merchandising execution team supervisor. So I was in charge of about 20 people at the high. We did all the resets. So if you've been to Home Depot, we went in and did the Christmas resets and spring resets and pretty much get new merchandise out and stuff like that.
What is the Home Depot and the business of the business? What is the business of the Home Depot? Sorry, that was a
Home improvement retail sales.
And so if you could just remind us of your current duties. Your
My current duties
Yes.
are basically doing resets, getting sales and promotions ready and stuff like that.
I'm showing the defense what's been marked for identification of State's Exhibit 92.
Yes, you may.
Mr. Watson, I'm handing you what's been marked as State's Exhibit 92 for identification. Can you take a look at those items? And just look up and do that. So you can remove that paperclip, and if
Okay.
you like, you can remove the actual pages from the plastic.
You want me to remove these?
Yep. So you can remove it.
A boom mic would be awesome.
And the final page, if you can just take a look at that.
Okay.
All right. Are you familiar with these documents, Mr. Watson?
Yes. The spreadsheet kind of is something that you pull for a report if you're looking for something for receipts and transactions. And the last one is a receipt.
So let me ask you this, Mr. Watson. Are these records typically held in the ordinary course of business?
It's something that if you had to look up receipts and transactions, then you would. Most people wouldn't get them.
Most people wouldn't, but employees of the Home Depot would. You're able to access those.
If you worked in a certain department, which I did, I ran the service desk, so I had to do audits on this stuff every so often.
And that last document,
Mhm.
what did you describe that as?
Receipt from a transaction from the Manchester location on 2/26/2020 around 11:42 a.m.
Were you working at that location
Yes.
on February?
I'm just going to remind you both, this is a very big room, so it's really
Oh.
important that all the jurors are able to hear
Okay.
both of you. So if you could keep your voices up, please.
Sure.
Were you working at the Home Depot on February 26th, 2020, Mr. Watson?
I was employed with them then.
How were you so employed at that time?
I was merchandising execution team supervisor at that point.
You said you had an opportunity to review these records previously. Let me ask you this. Are those fair and accurate to the best of your knowledge with the records that you reviewed prior to taking the witness stand?
Yes.
And at this point, the state moves to strike what's been marked for identification, strike the ID of Exhibit 92 and mark as full.
Counsel?
We rest on our prior objection.
All right. The ID is stricken. It's entered as a full exhibit.
Okay. So, Mr. Watson, I'm going to ask you to just take a look at these items, and I want you to start with, it looks like they're in order still.
Mhm.
What's the first date you're able to see? And I want you to go to the last date. From the first date to the last date, what is the first date you're able to make out on those documents?
February 5th, 2020 to March 4th, 2020.
And I'm just going to ask you to talk to the back of the room so the jurors can hear
Oh.
you. What is the first date you're able to see?
February 5th, 2020 to March 4th, 2020.
And if you can do me, so if you can count how many transactions you're able to observe on those documents.
About 33 of them.
33. Okay. And what do those documents capture? What are we looking at? What are the documents?
Different stores, different addresses, and store numbers. So there's quite a few of them for around this area. And then
And when you say different stores, what is that?
there's Manchester, Londonderry, Hooksett. So the different Home Depot stores in this section.
And are these transactions that we're looking at or something else?
They are transactions for the different times, and it looks like for a specific class that they were looking for.
Okay. And what is that specific class?
Looks like lime and gypsum. So anything under that category.
Are you familiar with what lime and gypsum is?
Yep. It could be anywhere from drywall to powdered or stuff for gardening.
Stuff for gardening.
Mhm.
Okay. Is there a specific SKU number associated with those purchases? And when I say SKU number, let me back up. Are you familiar with that term SKU?
Yes, we use it every day.
Can you tell the jurors what it means? Let me ask you this. Is the Home Depot able to track specific purchases?
Oh, yes. We can look up different line items.
Okay. When you say line items, how do you look up those different line items?
Typing in the SKU number or description into our computer system, and you'll be able to validate what somebody has purchased.
Those specific SKU numbers, are they related to specific items that you sell at the Home Depot?
Yes,
Does each item have its own unique SKU number?
it does.
And are you able to make out the SKU number specific to those purchases? Let me strike that question. You mentioned a receipt.
Mhm.
Can
The
you tell the
receipt.
jurors again what the date is of that receipt?
The receipt for the piece of paper is February 26, 2020.
And do you see one of the SKU numbers that you mentioned?
Limestone 221-104, which is unique for that one, for limestone.
What else do you see present on that receipt, Mr. Wasson?
Looks possibly like a tool, a fuel grinder, and a blade for a tool.
And that's a Diablo blade for the
Yep.
tool. What else do you see on that receipt?
Total cash, change given, the price of everything, each line item, and the total.
Okay. When you say the total cash, I want, if you can set the receipt down and turn back to the larger document.
Mhm.
How many cash transactions do you see present on that list of 33 sales?
3.
Okay. And what are the dates of those cash transactions?
February 15th, February 26th, and March 2nd.
All right. And specific to this receipt, turning back to the receipt rather,
Which would have been the February 26th Manchester location. Where is it? Sorry, my eyes got lost.
take your time. So you said February 26th, Manchester location. That's February 26th of 2020?
Yep.
Okay. And you mentioned earlier when you were reviewing the receipt that there was a cash total.
Yep,
What was the cash total for those items?
$400.
Sorry.
The total for the product was $396.35. Paid $400 and got change of $365 back.
So the person that made that transaction gave $400.
Mhm. Yes.
And Thank you, Mr. Watson. No additional questions.
Good morning, Mr. Watson.
Good morning.
Can I grab that microphone?
Yes, you may. Thank you.
This lawyer is very
So, Mr.
conscious
Watson,
of
I'm
the
Jamie Brooks, and I
sound.
represent Adam Montgomery. I'm also going to ask you a few questions.
Mhm.
So, Exhibit 92 consists of 2 documents, correct?
You talking about this right here?
Yes,
Are you-
the exhibit in front of you now, Exhibit 92.
Okay.
There's 2 separate documents there, correct?
Mhm. Yes.
And the first one is a document collecting all of the limestone purchases made at various Home Depot locations in New Hampshire from February 1st of 2020 through March 4th. Is that correct?
No, February 5th.
February
2020.
5th through March 4th.
Yes.
And if I may approach,
Yes.
let's take a look at that document.
That's the receipt. That's the pages. And
That's the spreadsheet.
Yeah.
Where are the SKU numbers? Which page? You have a spreadsheet out in front of you, correct?
Mhm.
And this spreadsheet represents 33 separate purchases of some kind of limestone.
So the SKU number is right here, the 22104. This is all the 221104. Right
So
here.
these are all different SKU numbers then.
This is mostly the SKU number for looks like for the limestone.
What are these other
That's
lime
the,
gypsums?
so that's the subcategory. So it goes subcategory and then sub description. So there's like a big, how Home Depot does it is they have like a class of like hand tools. And then it goes into either a manufacturer, and then it goes into what kind of hand tool, and then it goes into the SKU specific. So it gets categorized in different things. So this is your start of your top class, and then it goes down to more specific of the SKU number. So it's like parent, kid, grandkid.
Okay. But all 33 of these are various limestone products?
It's all the same SKU number. Looks like there might be another. Yes, so it's all the same SKU number here, except for 2 of them, which is a green and grow limestone, which is a totally different product, but it's still a limestone category.
Okay. 33 purchases from, was it 5 locations? Manchester, Hooksett, Londonderry, South Merrimack, and Concord.
It looks like it. Yep.
It's fair to say, though, that Home Depot is not the only store that offers limestone products.
There is other retailers that do sell limestone.
The next document, it is a receipt for a February 26th purchase,
Yes.
cash purchase.
Yes,
It does not, that receipt does not indicate the identity of the purchaser.
it does not.
And based on your managerial experience, Home Depot retains camera footage for how long?
I'm not sure on that. I never, as the position I was in, we never really had to go to the cameras unless we were asked to validate something. But we have no access to it except for loss prevention and corporate.
And those cameras and the footage obtained therefrom, to your knowledge, is it kept forever?
I'm not aware of, I'm not sure.
It's possible that it gets lost over time.
With the company as Home Depot, probably stays for a long time.
I don't have anything further. Thank you for your time, Mr. Watson.
Any objection?
No, Your Honor.
All right, sir, you may step down. You are excused. Counsel?
I just looked it up, Harlot. Yes, you can buy lye at Home Depot and Walmart. Yeah, I know. I gave him too much credit for, but people who have are record or career criminals, they associate with career criminals who do know how to do this stuff. So think about it, right? You're a YouTuber, you're new to YouTubing, or you don't have as much experience as other YouTubers. And so you start to talk to other YouTubers about their experiences, because it is, there are a lot of technical details to being a YouTuber, right? You can't just jump in and know everything right away. It's technical details, it's ethical details, it's things that will that you really shouldn't do as a YouTuber, that you wouldn't know not to do, right? That's not necessarily true, Johnny, but I can see what you're saying. But anyway, so in the when you're a career criminal, and what you do is going around, doing crimes all the time, you associate with people who know that stuff, and you might associate with people who have disposed of bodies. I mean, so I would imagine that maybe he talked to somebody who knows how to dispose of bodies, and they said, go get lye, and he thought they said, go get lime. Okay, they are bringing in another witness. Exactly. Even being in a chat can have its pitfalls that you would never even think of. It just takes practice, Lil Red. I was uncomfortable in a lot of aspects of it too, but it's just about practice. It's about learning. Everybody has the ability to learn. I bet you can do it.
You swear that the testimony that you're going to provide this jury will be the truth and the whole truth with the claims and penalties of perjury?
I do.
You can make yourself comfortable with the water there if you need it.
I believe this is a detective, but I haven't caught his name yet. They haven't said it loudly on a mic or anything.
And Detective Rayhill, if you can just start by stating and spelling your full name for the record.
It's Max Rahill, Rahill.
And
Max
Detective
Ray.
Rayhill, I've called you a detective, but how are you presently employed?
I am a detective with the Manchester Police Department.
And how long have you been a detective with the Manchester Police Department?
I've been a detective for about 3.5 years, but I've been employed with the Manchester Police Department for 9.5 years.
When did your employment begin with the Manchester Police Department?
July of 2014.
And prior to being a detective, what was your assignment?
I was a patrol officer.
What are your duties as a patrol officer with the Manchester Police Department?
Responding to in-progress calls, accidents, thefts, doing proactive work, traffic stops, things of that nature.
And remind us, what year did you become a detective?
In 2020.
2020 until now. What are your current duties and what are your role and duties as a detective with the Manchester Police Department?
So I'm currently assigned to the General Investigations Unit, and we typically do general investigations, more specifically burglaries, thefts. I'm kind of more geared towards the violent crime and evidence aspect in the unit.
Any prior law enforcement experience prior to the Manchester Police Department?
I was actually a court officer at this courthouse and Manchester District Court.
And how long did you have that role for?
A little less than a year.
Detective Rayhill, did you graduate from the New Hampshire Police Academy?
I did.
And what year was that?
2014.
Do you recall what class you were?
165.
And do you participate in regular trainings through the Manchester Police Department?
I do.
Okay. How often would you say you participate in trainings?
I try to do a couple to a half dozen a year. More so, I mean, since I've been employed there, I've done a wide array of different trainings. But since I've been a detective and before I became a detective, I started to do more trainings and towards the investigative aspect of law enforcement.
So is it fair to say the trainings that you participate in currently are more geared towards your duties investigating?
Correct.
I want to switch gears, Detective Rahill. Were you assigned duties in your official capacity as a law enforcement officer with the Manchester Police Department regarding the investigation into the disappearance of Harmony Montgomery? I know that was a mouthful, but
Yes.
okay. And just briefly, if you could describe for this jury what your role and participation in the case was, just a bird's eye view.
Okay. So I originally started working on the case early January of 2022, where we would help with searches, follow-ups, things of that nature. But I didn't actually get assigned the case with Detective Dunleavy until February of 2022.
You mentioned a Detective Dunleavy. Is that Jack Dunleavy?
Yes,
And what is your understanding of his role in this case?
the lead investigator.
And so what was that interaction like between yourself and Jack Dunleavy?
We had a good rapport, just going back and forth on different things that needed to get done.
I guess my question, did you split duties?
Oh, yes, yeah, correct. Sorry.
And I think you said this, but your involvement in this matter began in January of 2020?
Correct.
2022.
Yes.
I want to discuss specific processing of an item, sealing.
Yes.
Can you describe your role and involvement in the processing of a sealing for the jurors?
Yes. So we arrived to process the scene June 4th of 2022.
Let me stop
Oh,
you
sorry.
there. When you say you arrived to process
Oh,
it,
sorry, 177 Lake Ave, which is the Families in Transition building, also known as FIT. So we arrived there that morning to get consent from the CEO and the president of FIT, along with the occupants of room 1 in the FIT building.
and when you say we arrived, were you with other detectives?
Yes, I originally arrived there with Detective Dunleavy.
And when you arrived, what did you do?
We vacated the residence and to get it prepped for processing it.
Did you process the sealing specifically?
Yes.
And how did you go about doing that?
So when we walked in, there was 3 areas of interest, and the ceiling that we're talking about, MER 3D, that was further back in the residence of room 1. And so the processing of that, it was a huge piece of evidence. So we needed kind of all hands on deck when we actually took the ceiling down. And
You just mentioned the evidence number, MER 3D.
Yes.
What's the significance of the MER?
so those are my initials.
And so did you log that evidence in under your own name?
I did.
And why did you do that?
I was tasked with documentation and collection that day when we arrived at FIT.
You mentioned collecting MER 3D. Did you also collect a vent cover?
I did.
And what was that logged under?
I believe the vent cover was MER 3A.
At some point during your time, is it fair to say that during your time at the FIT shelter, you did more than just document the ceiling?
Correct.
What else did you do that day?
So after we processed the ceiling and packaged up and got it out of the residence, we ended up cleaning it to make sure that there was no dust on the ground. And we went and processed the scene with, or sorry, not the scene, processed the room and the bathroom with Blue Star.
And walk us through that process. What was your specific role in the processing of that room and bathroom?
So my specific role was documentation of what we were doing, and I was with Detective Bombard and Detective Bergeron Rosa. Mhm.
So I want to switch gears with you, Detective Rahill. During your involvement on this case, did you have an opportunity to review Meta bank account records?
I did.
And specifically an account ending in 5270.
Yes.
And what is your familiarity with that account?
That is the bank account for Kayla Montgomery.
And to your knowledge, is that one that was a shared account?
Yes.
Objection.
Counsel? The objection is sustained. Let me ask a follow-up question.
So Detective Rayhill, you mentioned your familiarity with the records.
Yes.
How did you go about collecting? Did you collect those records?
I didn't physically collect them.
Did another officer
Yes.
involved with this matter collect those records?
Yes.
How did they go about collecting them?
Search warrant.
And you had a chance to review those records?
Yes.
Do those records document that? Well, let me back up. You mentioned that this was a shared account.
Yes.
What's the source of that information for you?
On the record.
Your review of the records?
Yes.
Your Honor, may I approach this one?
Yes.
Showing the defense what's been previously marked for identification as State's Exhibit 138. So Detective Rayhill, I'm showing you what's been marked for identification as State's Exhibit 138. I'm just going to ask that you take a moment and review those records.
Mhm.
Once you've had an opportunity to review those records. Thank you. So the records that I just handed you, State's Exhibit 138, are you familiar with this?
Yes.
Okay. What is it?
It was the bank records for that card number ending in 5270.
Familiar with these records? fair to
Yes.
say? Okay. Your Honor, I move to strike the ID of State's Exhibit 138 and mark as full.
Any objection? Yes.
I mean, the guy looks so young. He looks like he could be a high schooler sitting on that stand right there. He's so young looking, right? Like a baby. But anyway, I don't know. I don't think it's life for Adam Montgomery right now. I don't think he's serving life right now. But I don't have his sentence right in front of me at the moment. Walk away, Renee. 60 years. Okay, 60 years. Up to 60 years. So that's the maximum. The 60 years. Up to 65 years, up to between 60 and 65 years, according to the chat. According to the chat, the consensus is currently 30 up to 60 years. So minimum 30 up to 60. And a lot of times they'll serve even less time than that because our jail system, our prison system is so fucking crowded. So he's away for quite some time. At least we know that, right? That is cool comfort for, justice for Harmony. At the very least, if he is not found guilty in this trial, we know that he's put away for quite some time. At the very least, we know that. So the defense and the state are obviously arguing about this testimony. Yeah, he deserves at least that. I would agree. Well, to me, to me the state is currently proving beyond a reasonable doubt, in my mind, especially since he has conceded to the facts that Adam did desecrate and dispose of the corpse, move it around, all of that. I I would be shocked if he was not found guilty of those charges, right? As a result of this trial, the hurdle is whether there will be enough evidence to convict him of whatever manslaughter charge and whatever the technical details are on that manslaughter charge.
138. The ID is not stricken on 138. You can proceed.
So, Detective Rahill, I'm handing you back what's been marked as State's Exhibit 138 for identification. Fair to say that's a pretty lengthy document.
Yes.
I'm showing you now what's been marked as identification for Exhibit 61. So if you can take a moment and review State's Exhibit 61, just look up when you're ready. Do you recognize this document?
Yes.
What can you tell the jurors what it is?
So this is a withdrawal from Citizens Bank at 688 South Willow Street. The transaction was.
And let me stop you
Oh,
there.
sorry.
You're familiar with it?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Is this taken from that larger record, State's Exhibit 138?
Yes.
Okay. And there's something highlighted on it.
Yes.
And I think you were talking about that just now.
Yes.
Is this item, State's Exhibit 61, is that a fair and accurate representation of a portion of the records that you have in front of you, State's Exhibit 138?
Yes.
All right. Your Honor, the state moves to strike the ID of State's Exhibit 61 and mark it as full.
Any objection?
Overall.
Okay, other than the previous objection that was noted, the court will strike the ID and enter this as a full exhibit.
Okay, looks like we're plugging in the laptop to the monitor so that we can see something. Okay, so the defense contested part of the next to the last exhibit that was requested to be submitted, and the defense won that. But then the next piece of evidence that was testified to was admitted. And I think those two things are connected to each other.
I'm sorry.
That's how technical these things can get, you guys.
With regard to State's Exhibit 61, I'm going to put it up on the screen behind you. Is that the same document that you were looking at?
Yes.
And that yellowed in portion, what does that show us?
That shows a 500 withdrawal from 688 South Willow Street, which is the Citizens Bank.
And does it say the date on that document? The date and time of the withdrawal?
It does.
And you mentioned that it was 688 South Willow Street.
Yes.
Can you tell the jurors what the date and time is?
It is February 26, 2020, and the time is approximately 11:20 in 13 seconds.
11:20 and 13 seconds.
Yes.
And what was the amount that was withdrawn?
It was $503.50.
Your Honor, if I may approach this. Showing the defense what's been admitted as State's Exhibit 92. I'm showing you what's been admitted as State's Exhibit 92. I'm just going to ask that you look at the back page, the last page of that document.
in the plastic. Okay.
Are you familiar with that document?
Yes.
What is it?
It's a receipt from Home Depot on March Ave. The date, you want me to go into detail what it is?
Nope.
Okay.
You're familiar with it though?
Yes.
Fair to say. Okay. So let's talk about 688 South Willow Street.
Yes.
What's your familiarity with that location?
So it's a close proximity to the Home Depot at 129 March Ave.
When you say it's in close proximity, what does that mean?
It's within half a mile. So South Willow Street and March Ave are connected. So they're very close to each other. Or they touch each
Are you aware of how long it would take to get from the ATM to that Home Depot?
other. It depends if you walked or drove, but it would take about 10 minutes. Maybe a little less, 9 minutes.
Have you personally made that commute from the ATM?
Driving wise, yes, but not walking wise.
What prompted investigators to get these bank statements?
These specific bank statements
This transaction specifically
from the bank.
from the bank?
Okay. So we requested the MetaBank data for the Montgomerys to get a history of purchases. And when reviewing those purchases, we located this.
And did this specific one stand out to you?
Yes.
Why is that?
Due to the close proximity to Home Depot on March Ave and due to the fact that this was the day prior to a work order at the Union Street address, 644 Union Street.
What's your understanding of who lived at 644 Union Street?
Adam and Kayla Montgomery.
With respect to that Citizens Bank, did officers request surveillance footage from the Citizens Bank?
Yes.
Did you receive any?
No.
If I may approach again, Your Honor. I didn't hear if you permitted that. Your Honor. Can I approach this witness?
You can approach the witness.
So Detective Rahal, I'm handing you what I've shown the defense. It's marked for identification as State's Exhibit 91. And I'm just going to ask that you take a look at that document. Look up when you're done.
Okay.
Are you familiar with that document?
Yes.
Can you tell me what it is?
So this was a request for video in regards to the ATM that they did not have. And we also wanted the actual transactions from that ATM, which they did not have either. And this is,
Go ahead.
this was requested. I actually don't know when this was requested.
Fair to say several years ago.
Yes.
And then this is a newer document from, can you read the date on it?
Yeah, the top date says January 18th, 2024.
But you recall several years ago requesting that footage.
Years ago? Yes, a year ago.
In terms of your experience as a detective with the Manchester Police Department, do you typically request surveillance footage?
Yes.
Is it typically available?
It depends on when you ask for it. Depends if the incident just happened or it's something that is past tense and the video is no longer there.
And in this case, you mentioned beginning your involvement in January of 2022.
Correct.
The purchase that we're talking about, can you remind us of that date?
Yes, it's February 26th of 2020. So almost 2 years before.
Is that typical for your experience as an officer with the Manchester Police Department, as a detective with them, that they wouldn't still have this footage?
Correct.
Your Honor, the state moves to strike what's been marked for identification as State's Exhibit 91 and mark it as full.
Any objection? The ID is stricken. It's entered as a full exhibit.
So no surveillance existed, no transaction existed.
Correct.
It did exist through the Meta Bank.
Correct.
What was the next step in the course of the investigation into this specific purchase?
So due to the close proximity to this transaction, we requested lime purchases from Home Depot.
Was that a specific Home Depot or was it multiple Home Depot locations?
We requested multiple Home Depot locations.
And with respect to States Exhibit, what's been admitted as States Exhibit 92, is that reflected in States Exhibit 92?
I haven't fully looked through this.
Oh, please do.
I just did the back page, sorry. Is there papers in here?
There are.
Oh, okay, so there's more in there. Yes. There's multiple locations on here.
Okay. Which locations do you see?
Merrimack, Manchester, Hooksett, Londonderry, and Concord.
During the course of your... Did you have an opportunity to review those documents once they were received?
Yes.
And that was during the course of your involvement in this investigation? And do you recall when those items were received from Home Depot?
We requested them in August of 2022, and we received them about a month later.
What specifically were investigators looking for with respect to the purchases of Home Depot?
We were looking for lime purchases
Why were you looking for Home purchases?
due to a statement made by Kayla Montgomery.
And I'm
Transaction at Home Depot on March Ave.
just going to ask what that is.
Yes, so this is the receipt from a transaction at Home Depot on March Ave.
I'm just going to ask you to turn to the TV monitor behind you. Is that consistent with what you're looking at, the papers that you have?
Yes,
What is that?
it's a receipt.
And I want to talk about the receipt. You mentioned the ATM transaction at 11:20 in the morning on February 26th of 2020. What is the date and time of this Home Depot transaction?
11:42 a.m.
That's roughly 22 minutes after.
Correct.
And I want to discuss the amounts. Does that receipt tell you the amounts?
Yes.
Can you just point them out to the jurors?
Yes. It was $396.35.
Understanding what that means.
So the transaction was paid with cash, $400 in cash.
What's your understanding of the size of the lime bag that was purchased?
It was a 40-pound lime bag.
40 pounds?
Yes.
And what additional items were purchased during that transaction?
So there was a Milwaukee M18 fuel grinder, which is also known as an angle grinder, size 4.5 blade. There was also a Diablo 4.5 blade purchase and an M18 Milwaukee battery.
So Detective Rahil, I'm handing you what's been published as State's Exhibit 63. Do you recognize this item?
Yes.
And is this consistent with what is represented on that receipt?
Yes.
Was there a specific item number associated with the limestone?
Yes.
And what is it, if you can read it from the receipt there?
So it's 4 zeros and then it's 221104.
And again, the jury's heard that's an item number specific to that item.
Yes.
So Detective Rahill, I'm showing you what's been published as State's Exhibit 62. Do you recognize this?
Yes.
Can you tell the jurors what it is?
So this is a screenshot of lime bags that are sold at Home Depot that was presented to Kayla Montgomery during our third proffer with her in March of 2023.
The item that I just showed you, State's Exhibit 62, if you can just turn to the monitor behind you. Is that what's reflected on the monitor?
Yes.
And what was the purpose of presenting this to Ms. Montgomery?
To figure out what lime that might have been used in the disposal of Harmony.
Without saying what she said, was a bag indicated?
Yes.
And can you point the bag out that's indicated?
Yeah.
That was indicated that way.
Yes.
You didn't say. Now, you talked about a specific item number. Is that present on this item?
Yes, you can't see it in that screenshot though. I don't believe.
Were you able to compare the item number from this exhibit with the item number from the receipt, the Home Depot receipt?
Yes.
Are they consistent with each other?
Yes.
Sustained.
How did you compare those?
By researching and finding the SKU number associated with that bag.
Did you compare that to the receipt?
Yes, and that bag is
Sustained leading.
What was the result of that comparison?
Yes.
It is interesting to ponder whether Adam was planning this. I would lean on the no side because drug addicts do tend to be quite impulsive and don't really think ahead that far.
Detective Rahill, you mentioned doing research to find the SKU number of that particular bag. What research did you do?
I went on the Home Depot website and searched for that specific lime.
And did you compare that?
I did.
What did you compare it to?
I compared it to the receipt that we received from Home Depot, and they had the same SKU number.
Was that the same receipt that you just looked at?
Yes.
So the item number that's indicated in the previous exhibit is consistent with the Home Depot receipt.
Yes, it just didn't have the 4 zeros in the front, but it was 221104.
Yes.
Yeah, my personal belief is that he didn't plan to kill her, but then once he planned to kill her, then he went through all kinds of steps planning how he would dispose of her without her being detected. But and that it seems like the income, you know, I you would just have to there would just have to be a lot more evidence that he was planning to kill her. Then that's when the taxes came in, so he had the money to be able to go and
This is a
buy
good breaking point.
supplies.
So we're breaking
You know what I
lunch
mean?
Now, please come back at 1:30. I remind you, do not discuss the case with each other or with anybody else. Avoid any media, social media, or other coverage regarding this case. Don't do any independent research, and we will see you after lunch. Thank you so much for your time and attention this morning. All rise for the jurors, please. We don't need the detective now. So I'll ask you to step down. I'll remind you that you're not to discuss this case with anybody during the lunch break. The lawyers will communicate with you
Okay.
about
There-
that further.
What would you like me to do with this? Just over here?
You can leave it right there,
Right there?
and the lawyers will do it. Thank you so
Okay,
much.
thank
All right,
you.
very good. Okay, counsel, we're gonna take one more minute to discuss the issue that you want to discuss. So, approach. Why don't you approach?
Alrighty, court is on a break. It has been an interesting morning, if not confusing. It has taken us on kind of an up and down roller coaster, right? We had this very nervous DNA expert come on and basically say, yes, we found Harmony's DNA, but not Adam's or Kayla's DNA. And it sounds like they didn't even do a match for Kayla's DNA, which is interesting, very interesting. Don't know what it means for, the future moving forward. There was testimony about, what was purchased at the Home Depot. There was testimony from coworkers from the Portland Pie Company where Adam used to work. One of them saw him carrying a bag and put it in the cooler once. Another one of them saw him do it several times. They never asked for what was in the bag. They never, inquired about it. They just witnessed him bringing that bag in and out a few times. And then we had the motion to exclude evidence, or I'm sorry, that's not the formal name of the motion, but what they were basically trying to do is the defense was trying to get certain parts or possibly all of Kayla's testimony thrown out. It was denied pretty much immediately. The judge had already denied that motion previously. The defense was trying their hand at it again, saying that there was new testimony that conflicted with the testimony, and the idea was trying to get some evidence that was already admitted out of evidence. And the judge said, no, I think the state has met its burden for at least the evidence to be submitted for it to be considered by the jury. So, so that's that. And then, the last detective and the Home Depot supervisor confirmed the purchases from Home Depot. We learned the difference between lie and lime, and basically concluded that Adam is a dummy and thought he was buying lye when he was buying lime. He knew he was buying lime, but he thought that lime does what lye does. If I'm getting that right. So we confirmed that those purchases were made. We confirmed that he took a withdrawal from a bank right before that happened. The items were paid for in cash at that Home Depot, and Kayla had testified previously that they had received their tax refund check, and so they were able to make a withdrawal based, against that tax refund check. So, as far as this morning's day of evidence or of testimony, that the state is putting on, it really seems to me that the state is proving their case that that Adam disposed of the remains and carried the remains around. He, did all these things that they have accused him of doing with the remains. He has basically conceded to that. He has not pled any guilt to that. He has conceded to those facts. But what the state has even higher burden, a higher hurdle to go over, and that is to prove that Adam is the one who caused the death of Harmony. And it's extraordinarily hard to do that without a body, which we don't have. So the jury's going to have to make their decision based on, their observations of the evidence, of his behavior. And they're not supposed to infer anything from him not being in the court, but it sure don't look good. Human beings have a hard time sometimes controlling their biases. A lot of people think I'm not biased. Every human being is biased. It's about understanding what your biases are so that you can critically think on your own around your own biases. Okay. So what the jury needs to do is, a well-meaning jury member will go in there saying something to the effect of, to themselves, I have experience with this particular thing, so I have a bias, but that doesn't mean that I know what happened in this situation. And I agree with you, Tiggy Girl. I'm biased on guilt with this guy. The guy is just oozing with anger. He's a volcano waiting to erupt. You could even see it when he was sitting there in the monitor listening to the judge. He's very, agitated all the time. He can't even say a few words without spitting them out of his mouth like he's, spitting out seeds really as far. He's in a spitting contest with his words, right? So, yeah. So it's a very interesting trial. Today has been more interesting than yesterday. I mean, I think yesterday's testimony was important, but today's was easier to follow and more interesting, and a little bit more action in court. So anyway, I don't know if KNS is still here or listening or still in the chat. So in case KNS comes back in case KNS comes back for the replay or is still here, this special court clip I'm about to show you is for you.
Good morning, sir. What's your name?
Me?
Yeah, you. Yes.
Nathaniel Saxon, sir.
Your name's not Buttfucker 3000, you yo-ho. What kind of idiot logs into court like that?
Yeah, yo-ho. I see you, Claus. I definitely see you. Hi there. that was for you, KNS. I want to show another one. I haven't been able to get this uploaded into StreamYard, but it's still worthy of showing because it's so funny. This lady in court. This lady in court is quite the hoot. Watch this.
I've been there for 31 years. Why would I bother him now?
That's the
I don't know.
$63,000 question, ma'am. But
Used
here's
to be
the thing.
64.
Okay. Well, that was before my time. Look, ma'am, just don't have anything to do with them. Stay away from them. all
I
right?
swear to God and all that's Tony on a stack of Bibles, I will never go near him, talk to him, call him, or
What was
even
the
look
first
at
thing
him.
you were going to swear on besides the Bibles?
All that's holy.
What?
I don't remember.
Oh.
What?
All that's holy.
What?
All that's holy. Yeah.
Oh, all that's holy. Yes, sir. I didn't recognize your twang.
Ma'am, have you ever thought of doing a stand-up routine? Have you ever thought about that?
I did. Well, if you pay me good money, sweetheart, I'll be there. I'm really short of funds.
Ma'am, I got to tell you something. You seem like you have a great wit about you.
I do, sir.
Yeah. So
I mean, sweetheart, that's the only thing I have.
I've been called sweetheart in this courtroom since I guess Mr. Miller took over. But
Really?
just kidding.
Does
But,
that mean you're taking me for breakfast?
Let me ask you something, ma'am.
Yes, sir.
How have I done as a judge today? So far, how am I doing?
Not bad, but you could do better.
Okay. Can we get a drum roll with this?
Did you take pictures and audio? Did
Yeah.
you save yourself a lot of time?
We got it saved here, ma'am. And make sure,
Good.
aren't you supposed to say, and make sure you're going to tip all the bartenders and waitresses? You'll be here all week.
No, I don't tip anybody. I make them banana bread and chocolate pudding pie.
There you go. Well, he probably.
I make a mean chili.
There you go, ma'am. I got to tell you, you brighten my day, ma'am. All right.
That's what the last guy said, and then he sued me. Sir, do you take your medication?
Don't be
No.
Don't be disrespectful.
Why is it not disrespectful? Aren't you glad I got you from pro bono?
I'm glad
I give you a buck
I'm
a
glad
week.
you came in my court.
I love old people. I just do. I just really do. I have a soft spot in my heart for old people, especially since I'm getting to be one. Oh my gosh. And it is great. She has that whole gallery behind her. She had the whole gallery behind her just laughing hysterically. She was like, they were putting on a full-on routine. Oh my goodness. And I believe, I haven't looked up exactly what they were arguing there. I think it was a protection order because she was in a dispute with her neighbor, and they were she's feisty, so I can imagine her getting really feisty. Really feisty with the neighbor or whoever it was. He was just basically like, stay away, just stay away. All right. I'm gonna give y'all a little break. I'll reschedule for the afternoon, and we will be back when the court is back, and we will continue this. We'll see who the state brings on as more witnesses. I'll try to update my witness list by that time, making the arrow marks next to who's been testifying. Please remember to hit the thumbs up. Consider becoming a member if you aren't already. Be nice to everybody in all the chats that you go to. There's you can disagree without being an asshole. Just remember that. All right. Again, thanks you all for being here, and I will see you after the break on disorder in the court. Bye.